There.
Lou, could you take?
Yep.
Tell them to mute themselves.
Chairman Bennett. Here. First Vice Chair Phillips.
Present.
Second Vice Chair O'Brien. Second Vice Chair O'Brien. He's up there. He's got it. Representative Carson.
Present.
Representative Cortrivan.
Representative Cortrivan.
Present.
Representative Fenton Fung.
Present.
Somebody's,
Representative Fogarty.
Representative Fogarty.
Representative Handy. Representative Knight.
Here.
Representative Marzakowski. Representative McEntee.
here,
Representative McLaughlin. Representative Morgan. Representative Ranglin Vassal. Representative Speakman.
Present.
Chairman, there is a quorum.
Thank you. Can I hear a motion to hold all bills for further study?
So moved.
Okay,
But you need a roll. Chairman, the roll.
yeah.
Roll call.
A vote, roll call.
Chairman Bennett.
Yes.
First Vice Chair Phillips.
Yes.
Second Vice Chair O'Brien.
Here.
There he is, okay. Representative Carson.
Yes.
Representative Cortrivan.
Yes.
Representative Fenton Fung.
Representative Fenton Fung.
Yes.
Representative Knight.
Yes.
Representative McEntee.
yes,
Representative Speakman.
Yes.
The motion passes 9-0.
Representative Fogarty is also yes. I don't think you called my name.
Representative Fogarty.
Yeah, I'm a yes too, Representative O'Brien.
oh, you got him.
I've
Oh,
got
yes.
it.
You got one more.
Representative McLaughlin.
Present.
All set. 11-0.
Thank you. I'm going to ask members to mute their mic when they're not speaking. Tonight, we're going to be postponing H5760 at the sponsor's request. The first bill we're going to start off tonight with is 5525 by Speaker Pro Tem Kennedy. Speaker Pro Tem, you there?
Yes, I am. Thank
got
you
the
so much,
floor.
Mr. Chair and ladies and gentlemen of the committee. So 5525, having sat on the Environment Committee the past couple of years, even though I'm not on there this year, one of the issues that came up, and we saw a lot of people from across the state of Rhode Island coming in to testify on, was the issue of the number of photovoltaic solar facilities that were being put up around the state of Rhode Island, particularly in our rural and suburban communities where tens of thousands of trees were taken down in order to put in these installations. And throughout the process, as we heard the testimony in the past years from people regarding this, the biggest complaint was what happens at the end of life for these facilities. They usually have a lifespan of 25 to 30 years. What do we do when we reach the end of life? And since there isn't any specific plan in place here in the state of Rhode Island, who becomes responsible for these? Is it the property owner? Because in many cases, the property owner is seeking to have a zone change for their property. Once they get it, they sell the property, and now it's in somebody else's hands. And after a period of time, quite likely, these installations will get sold again and again. But the original property owner has made their money. The original developer has made their money on this. So what this piece of legislation does is it would set up a program for the state of Rhode Island that requires the Department of Environmental Management to develop guidance for photovoltaic module stewardship program, which would help to assist manufacturers in preparing and self-implementing a take-back and recycling program for these solar modules. In most cases, because of the materials that go into the manufacturing of this, you know, we've got plastics, glass, steel, other types of metals. Some of them are precious metals that all could be recycled at some point in time. So it would established that DEM, by January 1st of 2022, would have a process to develop the guidance necessary to assist the manufacturers or a stewardship organization or various stakeholders to begin this plan of fully developing an implementation date of around next July 1st of 2022. Each manufacturer would then submit their plan to DEM by July 1st, 2022. They describe how they plan to finance the take-back and recycling system, include the cost to implement and manage the recycling of the panels and components. And then by April 1st, 2024, as the bill outlines, DEM would require manufacturers or designated organizations to provide an annual report on the progress of implementing the plan and how they are doing at achieving recycling. And they could also make recommendations to DEM or the General Assembly on enhancements or potential changes to the program. Ultimately, what we want to make sure is that by July 1st, 2023, any company or manufacturer that's looking to do a project in the state of Rhode Island must have an implementation program in place for the recycling of these solar panels. So when we reach that end of life stage, or if panels should go bad in between now and then, there's a process in place in order to do the recycling. Failing to do so, DEM would be able to send them a warning letter first before issuing a fine, and the fine could be up to $10,000. As an alternative, a manufacturer who chooses to participate in a national take-back program, they would not be bound by the Rhode Island requirements as long as they submit the information to the state of Rhode Island that they're going to participate in the national take-back model, and that model must be similar to what Rhode Island has, because we want to make sure that this material, these panels and the components in them are recycled. And you might ask, where did all this come from? The state of Washington implemented this about a year ago. So they're in the process now of beginning to go through this very same process that I'd like to see us do here in the state of Rhode Island. The only thing that I would bring to your attention, as often happens with legislation that's drafted, it says that the effective date should be upon passage. If we need to extend that out a little bit further in order to give the necessary notification to DEM, to different companies and things, I'm fine with that. I mean, I have no problem with extending that out to October 1st or November 1st. And then, as mentioned, the bill would really begin the process as of January 1st, 2022, would get DEM to start establishing the necessary requirements to fully implement this. But I think this would address a lot of concerns of the environmental community. It's not in any way made to stymie the industry, but the industry should be stepping up and ensuring that going forward, there's a recycling program in place.
Thank you, Speaker Kennedy. Any questions? Representative Knight.
Speaker, so it sounds a lot like the, it sounds like a lot like the paint program that we have. Is that basically what you're thinking?
Well, and I remember sitting through the testimony when we were talking about the paint program as well. In this particular case, right now, there's nothing in place in any of the communities that have these large-scale facilities that have gone into them. And I really do think, that we have to start thinking down the road. Some of the smaller panels that have been in operation here in Rhode Island for a number of years, they're getting close to the end of life. These large-scale facilities, which, I know in the town of Hopkinton, we have one that's well in excess of 100 acres in size. They took down probably 50 or 60,000 trees. So what do you do when you have all these panels? We got to come up with some type of recycling program. So it is somewhat on the same idea as that, but what I did was I looked at what Washington State is doing, and I said, they're the first to actually implement a model. My hope is that at some point there's going to be a national model, as was mentioned in the legislation. But one way or another, we've got to address this.
Thank you. Good bill.
Representative Corcoran. Representative Corcoran?
Thank you. Sorry. Yes, I had to get to the unmute button. Thank you, Representative Kennedy. I think this is definitely worthy of discussion, and thank you for putting the bill in. Do you have any sense of what the cost would be? And I guess eventually end users would, I guess I'm thinking the difference between the large scale solar installation that you mentioned in Hopkinton and the solar panels on my roof. So can you talk about the difference in how you think the cost would transfer through the transactions?
Well, I think the going forward, because this is basically for those facilities that are already up and operating, the question is, do we have the ability to go back in time and do something? The ultimate goal here is in creating this stewardship program. It's supposed to involve the manufacturer. It's supposed to involve the installer. And, you know, potentially could it mean that the cost of putting up a small scale, you know, solar photovoltaic panels on somebody's house, would it increase the cost slightly? Possibly. That would be the case. On the other hand, if we start doing this on a large scale basis and we get other states deciding to do the same thing, then it would actually result in a national program. We get the national program and every state is requiring something like this. Then I don't think we're going to see, you know, dramatic costs, because with the components that go into these photovoltaic panels, and it's such a hard word to say, there are so many different things that can be recycled within them. And that's the thing. Right now, nobody's recycling any of that at this present time. So, you know, let's not put those into a landfill.
No, I totally agree. What's the cost in Washington State? Have they,
this is the first year that they're starting to actually move forward with the implementation stuff. So the online articles that I've been reading from Washington State, I haven't heard of any major costs involved yet. And I think my main purpose in bringing forth this legislation is we need a starting point for discussing this going forward, because we want to try to keep this environment clean.
Thank you.
I have a question. It's Representative Fogarty.
Okay, one moment. I'm having trouble with the microphone. It doesn't want to turn on. Go ahead, Representative Fogarty.
I have a constituent who has approached me about the cost. I might have lost a couple of minutes there. I lost volume too. About the recycling and putting it on the customers beforehand, which will reduce our chances of getting more people to use solar power, and using these. I don't know. Again, I lost some of the communication there. What's the cost of putting these or the recycling in Washington? What is, has they been?
Washington State has just begun the process now, so they're actually going through the steps in the how the legislation outlines it, where they're supposed to begin doing their stewardship plans, where each manufacturer is notified of the process. Each manufacturer is supposed to take that information and then start coming up with how they plan to implement it in the state of Washington. So we would be doing the same type of system. As you can see, it wouldn't start until January of 2022 that DEM would begin the process. By next July 1st of 2022, then DEM would start notifying the different companies. By July 1st, 2023, each company at that point in time must have a program in place. And then by July 1st, 2024, we would actually get the first report back telling us what kind of success has been achieved by this. And in the meantime, if from the implementation date to July 1st of 2024, if there's a national program that gets set up in between or in the interim that companies can get and become a part of, then the state of Rhode Island would recognize that as being the approach to take for those companies that want to avail themselves of that. Again, this, Representative Fogarty or Chairwoman Fogarty, is not to stymie the industry, but the industry should be making every effort possible to ensure that there's a recycling program in place. Because
I don't disagree with you. I think that there should be some type of recycling in place. His concern is that, this is just an industry that's getting off the ground, here in Rhode Island more and more. And it was that he considered it to be a job killer. So, so that's why I just wanted to voice his concerns, because I see him frequently and I know he's probably paying attention to this. So that was his concerns. We're going to have to find a balance between keeping jobs in this industry and certainly recycling, because I totally agree these things can't be left lying around. But thank you for your information. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions?
And Chairman, just so you know, I did submit to the clerk a detailed report, which I think was uploaded to the General Assembly website, which talks about this bill. It quotes information from the state of Washington, includes the information and even the contact person in the state of Washington in case anybody wanted to do any further follow-up on this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Speaker Pro Tem, Chairman, it's Barbara Ann Fenton-Fong. How are you?
Hi, Representative.
Got a question for you on this. I used to live in Australia, and they use a lot of solar panels because a lot of their rural areas are really off the grid. They have started this process probably a couple years ago. They do a lot of re-recycling of the components of the solar panels themselves, especially the brackets, the semiconductors, and some of the crystalline structures in it can be recycled as well. My question is, our current recycling capabilities here in Rhode Island, are we able to recycle these bits? And, do we have the capacity given our current status at the resource recovery?
So the answer to that is, I don't know if these panels would even be recycled in the state of Rhode Island itself. These panels may be, because of the fact that each company is supposed to come up with their own plan for doing so and submit it to the Department of Environmental Management, it's quite possible that a company would take the panels back and then figure out how they're going to break them down. Ultimately, they have to give a report to the DEM as far as what did they do with the panels and what was the result of it, what was recycled from it.
I appreciate that clarification. Thank you.
Any further questions?
I have a question. This is June Speakman.
Go ahead, Representative Speakman.
Thank you. Speaker Pro Tem Kennedy, do you know, and this is sort of an analogy, if I were to have my gas furnace removed, who is responsible for disposing of that furnace?
That I do not know the answer.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. This sort of is analogous to that, right? My guess is.
I know there's the situation if you had an oil tank in your basement.
Yes.
And then you switched over to natural gas. In some cases, they could convert the boiler by just switching something out, so you could still use the same furnace. But then you, as the customer, are responsible for the removal of that oil tank in your basement.
Right. So I bear the cost of disposing of the heating system that I can no longer use.
Correct.
Thank you.
That would be my assumption.
Yep.
That would be the case.
Thank you.
But what the biggest fear, and this is what has come up in the public hearings again and again and again, is will the companies that have basically promised the world, in some communities, we're going to pay for all of your electricity costs for your local municipality for the next 20 years or the next 25 years, and we're going to give you this that you can put towards your recreational programs. There are all kinds of things that are being promised, but when we reach the end of life of these panels, are they going to be there? to decommission them? That's the question. And we want to make sure there's something in place so that when that time comes, they can be decommissioned.
Yeah, I agree with you. At some point, someone has to pay for the cost of recycling these. It can't be put on the municipality or the state. Whoever is either making money off of the system or using the system has to pay for it. I agree with you. Thank you for putting this bill forward.
Any further questions? Representative Corcoran.
Yes. Are there companies that you know of, Speaker Pro Tem Kennedy, that are actually picking that take these now? I was just looking at your document is online, but I was looking at one of the other letters from Newport Solar, and that is what he is saying.
Yeah, I do not know of any specific company that is doing this at the present time. No.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Seeing none, we'll go to our verbal testimony. I would like to say, well, before we get this on the postponed bill 5760, if you've already submitted written testimony, there's no need to resubmit it. We have it. And that bill is by Representative Speakman, an act relating to agriculture and forestry. And if you're wondering how to read the written testimony, you go to the General Assembly homepage, right-hand corner, it'll say Documents. You go there, hit Environment and Natural Resources, and all our written testimony will come up, including Speaker Pro Tem Kennedy's. Thank you. Hi, Mr. Beecher.
Yes.
Hi, this is Representative Bennett, Chairman of the House Committee on Environment and Natural Resources. The floor is yours.
Awesome. Thank you, Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Eric Beecher. I'm the president of Soul Power Solar Installation. We're a Rhode Island-based solar installation company. We are strongly opposed to Bill H5525, the Photovoltaic Take-Back Act. We're an employee-owned business with 10 employees, and we install about 3,000 solar panels per year. And we also strongly support solar panel recycling. We actually currently take down damaged panels, and we do already recycle our panels that are damaged or that can no longer be used. So all the questions that came from the rest of the committee, I'd be happy to answer those. We do actively recycle solar panels right now. The way that this bill is written, it would actually make it more difficult to recycle solar panels. And more importantly, it would basically be a ban on the sale of solar panels in Rhode Island. So while this may be well-intentioned and we do support solar panel recycling, if this were to pass, it would basically just cause manufacturers to refuse to sell their panels in Rhode Island. This bill requires the solar panel manufacturers to take back solar panels and to recycle them and to pay for that process. And no manufacturer is going to agree to take on that liability. They're not going to, jump through the hoops that are written into this plan. Just for an example, and I like the analogy that was proposed in the questions, I actually have a similar one. One of our major panel suppliers is LG. So imagine telling LG that you want to buy a refrigerator, but whenever you're done with it, they have to take it back, they have to recycle it, and they have to pay for that entire process. And maybe at the time that they sell it to you, there's no way they're going to sell you a fridge. It's just as absurd to make the same demand for solar panels. You can't go to LG and say, hey, I want to buy a solar panel, but whenever I'm done with it, you have to take it back and recycle it and pay for that whole process. They're not going to agree to that. And so as written, this bill would make solar manufacturers refuse to sell their panels in the state of Rhode Island. Yeah, we agree with the title of this bill and we agree with solar panel recycling, but we pretty much disagree with everything in the implementation. This bill calls for a convoluted payment and tracking system for solar panel recycling that's done by the manufacturers. Whenever we recycle a solar panel, to answer one of the questions that's been out there, it costs about $15 per panel, plus the cost of shipping it to the recycling facility. It's a simple process. We do this now. It's simple and effective. When we recycle a panel, we pay the cost to recycle it. It seems like, almost common sense to me. And this bill is trying to force solar panel recycling and collection on manufacturers. They're an entirely different business. And they're not going to change up our business model, especially to do business in Rhode Island, just because the way this law is written. And so, we don't think manufacturers should be handling solar panel recycling. It should be companies that already recycle solar panels, which we are currently using. And then the collection of these panels, it would be nice if there were a better collection process. And we think that should be handled by maybe like RIRRC or someone who already, manages e-waste collection and disposal. So we would like to continue selling, installing, and recycling solar panels. This bill as written would make it impossible for us to do any of those things because it creates an unreasonable liability for panel manufacturers. And Rhode Island is not in a position to demand that solar manufacturers are going to change their entire business model just so that they can sell panels here in our tiny state. Like, they are not going to jump through these hoops. They are not going to pay these costs. I definitely think that, yes, solar panel recycling is worth it and someone should pay that. It's not the manufacturer. And as an installer of solar panels, I don't have power to go to LG and say, hey, I really want you to write this plan for the state of Rhode Island. I really want you to, pay these costs to recycle panels. Like, that's not going to happen. They're just, no one is going to sell solar panels in Rhode Island. And so as a local business that's recycled solar panels, we're happy to answer questions and also to provide suggestions about how to properly implement a solar recycling program. And so, please check my testimony online. It has some more information. I'm happy to answer questions as well. Very few panels have reached their end of life in Rhode Island, so there's still plenty of time to conduct a proper stakeholder input process and to draft well-thought-out legislation. We're strongly against this bill and urge you to vote against it because it is effectively a ban on the sale of solar panels in Rhode Island. Thank you.
Mr. Beecher. We do have your written testimony. Any question for Mr. Beecher? Representative Carson.
Thank you, Chairman. I actually have a comment that I want to make, and I want to thank the Speaker Pro Tem for putting this bill in. I think that I'm not sure if everyone on the committee was serving at the time that the legislature created other product stewardship programs. Product stewardship programs actually came out of the Northwest, which the Speaker Pro Tem has described to us. And it's a waste disposal model whereby the manufacturers take responsibility for recycling their product. They create an organization that manages the recycling of the product, and they design a cost model that is shared between the manufacturers and, in some cases, the consumers. It's important to remember that Rhode Island already has two product stewardship models in place: mattresses and paint. And in both of those cases, the manufacturers have agreed, didn't put them out of business. They didn't stop selling paint. They didn't stop selling mattresses. Those businesses are still thriving. They created these stewardship organizations. And as the Speaker Pro Tem has said, as the model begins to pick up speed and it gets traction, the industry begins to pick up other states that are creating these stewardship models, and it becomes very cost effective to replicate these models from state to state. So my main message here is we're already doing this with two other products, and it's paint and mattresses. So it's not something foreign to DEM to manage. And it's not something that has put any other product stewardship manufacturers out of business. I think that the comments by the last speaker were kind of interesting. He may want to shift that responsibility of designing the stewardship organization to maybe a different level of the distribution of the product. But basically, this type of a system is already in place in Rhode Island.
Thank you, Representative Carson. Vice Chairman Phillips.
Thank you, Chairman. I want to just add to what Representative Carson had just said. Actually, one of the programs that is in effect in Rhode Island right now, the manufacturers are actually making, or there's an organization that actually has a surplus of money in that recycling account. So I don't see how this speaker and this person that's testifying, without really looking into and talking to different people around the state, as Rep. Carson said, we've got two programs, so they should do it. My questions, though, are, if state by state is going to do it, how could any manufacturer refuse to sell in Rhode Island? That means that they're going to just shoot themselves in the foot and not try to go with what the majority of people want. So why would you literally say that they will refuse to sell panels in Rhode Island?
Yes, can I respond? Is that to me?
Sure.
Oh, yes, yeah, thank you. Yeah, so yes, I am very much in favor of a stewardship program for this. My technical opinion, I didn't get into the details in the testimony. I think it should be collected during the utility approvals process for solar panels. So whenever you go to the utility and you get approval for your installation, I think that's when the time that these fees should be collected for a stewardship process. But in our dealings with manufacturers, even like just getting products like shipped to Rhode Island, whenever there's special requirements, like if an inspector might want like a certain letter, or might need like a specific bit of like electrical code to meet like Rhode Island electrical code, something like that. Getting a manufacturer to comply with any kind of specific requirements is basically impossible from our point of view. And especially if like National Grid requires something specific, then getting a manufacturer to comply with that is very difficult. And so, yeah, we do support a stewardship program. If there were something like this, I think that Rhode Island should probably be the last state to sign on to it, just because we have the least amount of bargaining power in terms of like money that we're spending on solar. I mean, there are some states that have smaller solar markets, but we're the tiniest state, so we have the least ability to sway manufacturers to sign up for a program like this. And then I do think that the collection would be better managed and easier if it happens at the point of interconnection for these projects. So you go to the utility, you say, hey, I would like to connect this system, and they would say, okay, there's a fee of $10 or $15 that has to go, per panel that has to go into the stewardship program. And I think that's the point where that should really be levied. I don't think that you should try and levy that upon manufacturers.
Okay, follow-up question. Older panels, I know that some people have replaced their older panels, and I've heard, and I do not know for a fact, so that's why I'm asking, is there mercury or lead in the original panels, or are they still putting mercury or lead in panels also, if there is in the original ones?
Sorry, I don't know that. Yeah, I do know that, the places that do dispose of these, I do believe that they are actually recycling the components that can be recycled, but I don't know, what they're doing about the other components. I don't know the specifics of the disposal.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Any other questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Beecher. Our next witness will be Jeremy McDermott, Northeast Energy. He's in opposition of the bill. Mr. Jeremy, you there?
I am here.
Okay, Jeremy. Mr. Beecher took the lead in opposition, so I'm going to ask you to be brief and on point, and we also have your written testimony. Go ahead.
I will indeed. And Chair Bennett and distinguished members of the committee, thank you so much for the opportunity to testify this evening. I am Jeremy McDermott, the Vice President for Policy and Government Affairs at the Northeast Clean Energy Council. And we are a member organization with hundreds of clean energy companies in every segment of the industry across Rhode Island, New England, and New York. Echoing Mr. Beecher, I am here to testify in opposition to House 5525 for similar reasons. Now that solar electricity is a core part of our energy system, it certainly makes sense for policymakers, the industry, and others to consider the proper reuse and recycling of materials once they reach the end of their useful life. And our partners at national organizations like the Solar Energies Industry Association have already established solar recycling programs. And as you heard from Mr. Beecher, many of NECEC's members already recycle old panels and equipment. However, I think that this bill does not take the practical approach that would be necessary for a successful program and carries two significant risks. First, I do believe that manufacturers would simply opt out of the Rhode Island market and create a significant set of challenges for the over 1,000 solar workers in the state. No other state in New England that we know of has a recycling mandate like this. And again, we don't see the, manufacturers engaging in a program like this for one state without having a more integrated process to develop a program. I think the second piece is that the prescriptive nature of the program would be hard to administer, and it would put obligations upon manufacturers, over products where they have little control, and would create some very hard to quantify liability for a piece of equipment that can last over 25 years. I think that the much better approach is to take a look before you leap option, as has been noted. The great majority of solar panels in Rhode Island and across the country are still in service, and there is time to craft a strategy for recycling and reuse that brings together the industry, manufacturers, and communities in order to provide a policy and a set of goals a system that achieves all of the goals of the stakeholders. And so what we would recommend is that there be a study to study the scope, the cost, existing industry programs, and the overall economic and environmental impact of photovoltaic recycling before moving forward with a prescriptive program like that is written out in this bill. So with that, I do appreciate the opportunity to offer some oral testimony and would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you very much, Jeremy. You have a good night. Our next witness is Doug Sabetta, Newport Solar, in opposition. Doug, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Doug, I'm going to say what I said to Jeremy. We have your written testimony. Mr. Beecher took the lead on opposition, so be brief and to the point.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is Doug Sabetti, owner of Newport Solar, Rhode Island only, not just Rhode Island based, Rhode Island only residential solar installer. I've spoken with Solar Energy Industry Association. Yes, they are working on creating a national solar panel collection and recycling program. I've spoken with the vice president of my exclusive solar panel manufacturer, and they said, no, they will not create a program specifically for Rhode Island, but they are working with Solar Energy Industry Association on the national program. I've spoken with other installers who have called their manufacturers and spoken with them, and they have been told, no, their manufacturers are not making a program specific for Rhode Island. They're working with SEIA, Solar Energy Industry Association, on the national program. We have over 1,000 solar installers or, solar workers in this state, and that number is growing. And I'm sorry to all of the reps that think this is a good idea, but this bill threatens to kill all of those jobs. The manufacturers that I've spoken with are not going to create this problem, this program specifically for Rhode Island. Another complication that I don't think has been thought out with this bill is what happens if just a few manufacturers actually do create a program for the state? Then utility scale and residential scale installers will only have those panels to choose from, and the technologies for those very different industries are also very different. Commercial panels do not really work for small-scale residential systems and vice versa. So this bill will just create havoc if a couple manufacturers do comply with this. But in my conversations with manufacturers and other installers, that is not going to happen. I also recycle all of the panels that I collect, and they did not charge me for those. I had to pay to ship them, but they collected them for free. that company opened a facility in northern New York, and now they collect the solar panels for free with no shipping charge. And also, as Mr. McDermott mentioned, the panels in Rhode Island, solar panels have a 25 to 30-year lifespan, actually longer. They have a 25-year warranty. They last over 30 years. It'll be at least 15 years from now before this becomes any kind of substantial issue in the state of Rhode Island. And like I said, there are lots of organizations and companies working on a national program, and just companies that are creating a business and an industry out of collecting and recycling solar panels. So well before 10, 15 years from now, we're going to have plenty of solutions that don't threaten to kill the 1,000 jobs in the state, including my own. I'm not sure what else I can add that you haven't heard, so except the fact that Rhode Island Resource Recovery dumps all of their glass in the landfill every single day, and we don't have a buyer for lots of plastics, and we're drowning in plastic pollution. I would think that we would want to work on problems that are sitting in our lap now, not a problem that may occur 10 to 15 years from now if all of these solar recycling companies don't succeed somehow. So I will end there, and I'll take any questions.
Thank you. Representative Carson.
Thank you. Hi, Doug. How are you?
I'm nervous, Lauren. Thank you.
Don't be nervous. Actually, I think this is... Doug and I are old friends. I don't think that you need to be nervous. I think that this is opening a conversation. So I have a comment and a question. My comment is, it's not a bad idea that we start talking about this now, and that way in 15 years, it's not a big issue like plastics are at this moment. So, if we have to continue figuring out exactly the strategy here, that's a good thing because we can avoid that waste problem. But I guess my question for you is, you did some good research in contacting a lot of folks outside of the state, and I appreciate that. And both you and the other objectors have said that they're not going to want to do this for little old Rhode Island. Well, are they doing it for little old Washington? Like, that's the only state that has it. What's happened? Obviously, they've agreed to do it there.
They have not yet, and they haven't agreed there yet. And what the state of Washington is going to discover is what we're trying to inform you all of, that this is not something that's being ignored. This is something that has been front and center for the Solar Energy Industry Association, which is a very large, the biggest solar advocacy group in the country. This is front of mind for them. This is a high priority for them. They are all working on this. In the state of Washington, I will be very surprised if they create their own program that at least isn't tied to the national program that SEIA is working on.
Okay. Thank you.
And also, one other very, very important detail that makes me absolutely nervous about this bill, because I've worked very hard for 10 years to build my business, and my 14 employees are starting families and buying houses, all dependent on my business. So I'm extremely nervous. And I think recycling panels is a very good idea, which is why I paid money to have it done in the past. However, this is a bill that is poised to become law as it is written. This is not a bill that requests a study or requests a conversation. This is a bill that, makes rules and laws that threaten my livelihood and my business and the livelihood of my 14 employees. So I invite a discussion. We should all be talking to SEIA about this and being involved in their program, something that's economical and efficient and helps solar businesses and doesn't hurt them. This is a bill that becomes law. This is not a study. So that's the critical difference here, why I remain nervous.
Thank you. Any further questions?
I have a question, Mr. Chairman. This is June.
June, go ahead.
Yep, just to clarify to the witness, so who should be responsible for recycling the solar panels, and who should pay for it?
The responsibility should fall on the end user to put the panels, and it's not going to be the end user. It's going to be a contractor that they hire to come take the system down and either replace it or just remove it altogether. And just like Rep. Carson said, you can't buy a mattress and say, I don't want it anymore, and throw it away. You can't take a flat screen TV when it's at the end of its life and throw it away. You can't throw away e-waste, paint, all sorts of things. So it's the same thing with a solar panel. You need to, I would suggest that we would all be required to have solar panels when they're at the end of their life be submitted or contributed or collected into one of these programs that's already being established. It should be, the contractors, the end users, whoever, like who's responsible for not throwing away a mattress now? Who's responsible for not throwing away a TV?
Okay, yeah. I understand what you're saying. So if we have a 20-acre solar farm in the town that I represent, Warren, then the owner of those panels is responsible for arranging for their recycling, and the person who does the recycling is one of these contractors that has all the technology and all of that to recycle the materials. Is that what you're suggesting is the best system?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
That large system that you have in Warren, the company that just opened a facility in upstate New York would love to have all of those panels.
Okay, so there is a company in upstate New York that could handle the actual, if a truck pulls in with all the stuff in the back, that company in New York knows what to do with it.
Yes,
okay, good.
Today.
Thank you.
And that's today. And this market is going to grow as all of these utility scale systems that we see now come to the end of their life. 10 years from now, say for the first ones that were installed, this is going to become a huge, it is a huge opportunity, which is why these companies are forming. And this opportunity is only going to grow.
So
and
if we,
go ahead.
So if we in the state legislature want to make sure that happens, that the owner of the 20 acres does the responsible thing with the solar panels, how I know you don't like Speaker Pro Tem Kennedy's proposed legislative solution. So what would your proposed legislative solution be to make sure that these just don't get thrown in the landfill?
I would suggest a study to see how everybody around the country, I would suggest following the lead of the experts, Solar Energy Industry Association, who is working with these panel recycling companies. And also there's been a huge program in Europe. It's called PV Cycle. They've been doing this in Europe, all across Europe, for over a decade now. And SEIA is trying to model a system similar to Europe's. Europe is, 10 years, 15 years ahead of us in renewable energy. So I don't have the answer to that, but we can easily come up with the answer to that by speaking with SEIA and saying, hey, how are you doing formulating this plan? How can we help? What do we do as a state to ensure that all the panels in our state are getting into your program? That's what I would suggest.
And just to comment, I know you're nervous, but you did ask us why we aren't working on things like plastic. And of course, we're working on all of that. This committee is great. And Rep. Bennett
You
in
are.
particular,
I
Chairman.
apologize.
Yes,
You
so
are.
That's
but,
okay. That's okay.
It's not
Thank you.
solved. There's no buyer for glass.
Yep, I know. We've been made aware of that. Thank you. Thanks for the
There's no
clarification.
mandate for them.
Thank you. Any further questions? The committee would like to recognize Representative Mazakowski. Representative would like to be voted in the positive on holding all bills for future. You got that? How'd you like that one? Thank you. The rest is written testimony. Green Development is
Rep.
against the
Chairman?
bill. Say what?
Chairman?
Rep. Fogarty,
Rep. Fogarty?
you're popping out at me. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. And I do agree with what we've heard from these past three speakers, and I don't want anybody to be alarmed and losing sleep at night. I do think that there probably should be more of a study on this. I do think that that's what I'm hearing, and hearing that upstate New York has a recycling plant, and this might be again a growing business. And what he mentioned about it being recycled in Europe. I even remember there's been some recycling that popped a memory in my head that there's been recycling in other countries that have been taking a lot of the solar, even the solar that started back in the 70s when Jimmy Carter, started the solar program, and then that got squashed, we know, by, oil companies and so forth. But that China has been taking, talk about recycling, was taking a ton of our recycling, took a lot of that old 70s materials for solar projects and has used them in China, and actually took the solar panel that was taken off of the White House after Carter left, and is still using it in China. So I think there's ways of that we should look into this, not jump right on this and have more further study about the future of recycling, and maybe this could be an industry for Rhode Island to get involved with. So that was my 2 cents after listening to the people. I don't want it to be a job killer. I know a lot of people are getting into that industry. And, as time comes, we'll figure out a way how to recycle this properly. It does have to be recycled, there's no doubt about it, but we have to do it properly and not have people kill jobs.
At the same time, Mr. Chair, I would point out, again, I'm not looking to kill any jobs here in the state of Rhode Island, but I also know what my constituents have complained about when you see 80,000 trees taken down to put up a solar facility, and what guarantee do you have that at the end of the life of that facility, there's going to be somebody there that's going to ensure that those panels be taken away and recycled? There are no guarantees, and no community has been able to get a single guarantee from any installer for these large-scale photovoltaic facilities. No community has been able to get that yet, and that's what I'm concerned about.
No, and I definitely understand your concern, Chairman Kennedy. I certainly do. We have some time. I know exactly the facility you're talking about. I've seen it. It's to me, it's an eyesore, and it's atrocious. But we have some time before they get too old, to figure out what to do with them. So that's all I'm saying. I completely understand where you're coming from, and I understand where the solar is coming from. I think we need to look into it further. That's all I'm saying. Thank you.
Thank you. Green Development, no, I'm sorry, anybody else? All right. Green Development is against the bill. Product Stewardship Institute is for the bill. Terry Meyer, Audubon Society is for the bill. That concludes the hearing on 5525. Speaker Pro Tem, thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you everybody on the committee.
Our next bill will be is 5759 by Chairman Solomon. It's an act relating to property, dry dock facilities. Do you want to lead in, Representative Solomon?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. This act would amend the lien and notice procedures for facility operators of dry dock facilities. You may ask, what is a dry dock? A dry dock means any space and/or real property designed or used for the purpose of renting or leasing storage space for vessels, aka boats. Current law provides for a cumbersome process to go through, and in many cases, the owner of the boat cannot be found and served, which delays the process. Meanwhile, these abandoned boats are left taking up limited storage space. This legislation brings Rhode Island more in line with its neighbors such as Massachusetts and streamlines the process. We have some experts in the industry who will be testifying on this bill and could provide further detail from the perspective of the marine trades. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Solomon. There is no opposition to this bill. Any questions for Chairman Solomon? Seeing none, thank you, Chairman Solomon. Our first speaker will be Andy Tisco. He's from Rhode Island Marine Trade Associate. Andy, you there?
I am here.
The floor is yours.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Andy Tisco. I'm with the Rhode Island Marine Trades Association and operator of Bristol Marine in Bristol, Rhode Island. This bill put forth in front of you tonight is a bill that may be familiar as we had worked on it last session. And as the sponsor, Rep. Solomon, has said, it is meant to aid in the notice process and procedures to allow a boatyard to recognize a boat as abandoned and then obtain title to it for either disposal or future sale. As you may have seen, we understand that DEM does have some concerns with this bill as it has been written, and so we would like to understand what those concerns are and continue communicating with them so that we can come to agreement on the notice period and the methods of notification so that they're in agreement. I'm glad to answer any questions that the committee may have related to the bill, but in essence, the heart of the bill is within the delivery and notice period where we are proposing additional provisions so that commercial carriers can be used to provide a boat owner notification of abandonment in addition to the U.S. Postal Service, whereas it is often the case that boat owners will not accept certified mail, which will delay the process by months. And by doing this, it will be able to not just shorten the process, but make it easier to navigate by our businesses to make sure that there's more room in our boatyards for paying customers that can contribute to the marine economy within our state. So I'm glad to answer any questions from the committee.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much. Andy, have a good night. Our next witness, okay. Our next witness will be Brian Dursey, also from the Rhode Island Trade Association.
Any questions?
Brian, you there?
Yes.
Brian, you got to turn down your whatever you're using to listen to us with.
Very good.
Thank you. Go ahead. The floor is yours. We just heard from Andy Tisco. He's also in your association. So be on point and brief.
Very good. Good evening. Thank you to the committee and Chairperson Bennett. My name is Brian Dursey, and I am the Executive Director for the Rhode Island Marine Trades Association, here to support the House Bill 5759 represented by Representative Solomon. So the Rhode Island Marine Trades Association represents about 300 member businesses in the recreational boating industry throughout the state, and it's a vital part of the economy. The proposed amendments in this act are necessary and will help clarify the process and the procedures of obtaining title to vessels after they have been abandoned at a marina, a boatyard, or a marine repair facility. Previously, gaining the legal authority to address abandoned vessels on these properties used for storage has been a complicated and vague administrative process with really no clear protections or procedures. The proposed act reflects an adjustment to the requirements to protect the interests of both the vessel owners and the facility operators. And it'll also bring us more in line with our neighboring states who do have a more established and refined process. Our association is also looking forward to working with the Department of Environmental Management to address any adjustments to the amendments so that this bill can pass with joint support. In the spirit of keeping this short, I thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you. Any questions? Yes, Representative Knight.
Hi, just one quick question. I'm just curious, is there, how do you know legally when something has been abandoned? Is there a bright line rule for that, or is that something you got to go to court, get a title, or something like that? Sir?
Yes, is Andy Tisco still on the line, or is it just me at the moment?
It's just you. And if you don't know, you don't know. It's okay.
I won't have the details, but an abandoned vessel has basically been left on a marina, a boatyard, after numbers of months with unpaid bills.
Do you happen to know if there's a sort of bright line in the law when we can say, yes, something is abandoned or not? I'm just curious. I mean, I know it's secondary to the bill that's in front of us.
And so that's what the bill does address, is to clearly identify those timelines as to when the clock would start ticking, as to notices being sent out to notify the owner of the abandoned vessel.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much, Mr. Dursey. Our next witness will be Evan Ridley. He's also from the Rhode Island Trade Association. Evan, you there?
Yes, sir.
Evan, Representative Bennett, we've heard from two of your colleagues, and so be on point and brief and try not to repeat testimony. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be very brief. Just want to add that in addition to the protections that this bill will provide, ensuring responsible storage of vessels and supporting boat owners and business operators, RIMTA is recognized as a leading organization nationally on the topic of responsible end-of-life vessel management, and has recently received federal funding to advance research on the potential for a national recycling program based in part on the experience of our member businesses here in Rhode Island. So we recognize this bill as a significant source of support that will advance these objectives both here in the state and nationally around vessel recycling and the insurance of a sustainable future for recreational boating. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Yes, Representative McEntee.
I'm not sure which one of the witnesses I should ask this to, but what kind of efforts do you make to find the owner of the vessel, the person who owes you the money, and especially in the case where someone may have passed away, do you attempt to find the heirs at law? I'm just wondering, because you don't necessarily have a time limit on how soon you could proceed on these vessels, so I'm just asking, what in the industry, what kind of efforts do you make to find the person?
That question's for you, Mr. Ridley.
I'm going to defer to my colleagues on that one. I don't believe that I'm best suited to answer that question.
Which colleague do you want to refer to? Andy?
Yes, sir. I'll refer to Mr. Tisco on this.
Okay.
And I just want to add that I was contacted by Gail Wolf, who was one of the lobbyists for this organization. We talked about it at length, and I just wanted to know from the industry what efforts they make. Being a lawyer myself and having I represent a trailer park, and we have to go through much of the same issues if someone abandons the trailer on the property of the landlord. And, you know, we have to jump through hoops trying to find them and find heirs at law. And I'm just wondering if they make those same efforts. It's a different animal altogether, a boat versus a trailer. But just a question. They can get back to me at some other time, or maybe Gail can give me that information.
Understood. I would say, in general, yes, those same hoops do exist, and operators such as Mr. Tisco do go through extensive efforts to identify the owners, make public notice of the abandonment, and follow all the appropriate guidelines. With respect to details on those requirements, I would refer to Mr. Tisco, who is the marina operator.
Thank you.
We have his phone number also. Representative Cortland.
Yes, I work in the marine trades, and I thank you, Chairman Solomon, for putting this bill in. I put this in a couple years ago myself. I think a lot of times the owners don't want to be found. Their bills are so high that they exceed the value of the boat, and I can attest to the fact that there are, boat yards have like separate sections, just all of abandoned boats. And I think the goal of this would be to get these boats into Evan Ridley's RIMPA's recycling program so that they can clear their property and use it for money-making purposes instead of storing people's abandoned junk. But you're probably right, Carol. I'm sure they go through, or Rep. McEntee, that they have to go through the similar hoops that like a trailer park would. But it is a problem for the industry that these boats pile up. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative.
Thank you, Representative Cortland. And I recognize the problem. I sympathize with the boatyard owners because it is an issue, and I'm certain in difficult economic times it becomes a more egregious issue. And once someone takes up your space, that prohibits you from getting another paying customer on the lot. So thank you I understand it. I'm just wondering how far they have to reach before they can start this process. But thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Thank you very much, Mr. Ridley. You have a great one. Our final witness is Richard Cromwell from Maritime Solutions in support. Hi, Mr. Cromwell, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Representative Bennett, you've got the floor.
Thank you, Representative Bennett. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I appreciate this bill is be very helpful to all of us. My name is Richard Cromwell. I own Freedom Boat Club and Maritime Solutions. We're boat dealers. Reason that we're presenting this, I don't know what information you've heard, but this the issue of abandoned boats is a problem in a lot of the marinas, and the system to get rid of them is not simple. And so what we're asking for here is to make the process a little simpler than it is, so it parallels some of our neighboring states, and it just streamlines it so we can get rid of these boats, because a lot of times they don't have a lot of value, and they're a real nuisance, and we've just got to figure out a way of dispose of them, and so being tied up for years and trying to get ownership of them is very awkward. So I'm happy to answer any questions about this, but I'm just speaking on the behalf of myself and other boat dealers who sort of get stuck with these boats, and how we move them forward, get them out of the state and off our property and disposed of instead of just sort of abandoned in the middle of a harbor somewhere.
Thank you, Mr. Cromwell. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Cromwell. You have a good night.
All right, thank you for including me.
You're welcome. DEM has, like you heard earlier, does have some concerns, and I'm sure they'll be speaking with the sponsor. That concludes the bill 5759, and that will bring us to Bill 5358 by Representative McEntee, an act relating to health and safety, Plastic Waste Reduction Act. Representative McEntee.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, members of the committee. This is the ban the bag bill. So all of you who've been on this committee for years have heard it many times before. So I think this is my fourth shot at it, right? let's say 4 times is a charm. You know, we already have much of the state, I believe it's 17 communities, it may be even more than that at this point. But this bill will ban single-use plastic checkout bags statewide. It'll prohibit food deliveries in single-use plastic checkout bags, and it will encourage stores to provide and incentivize the use of reusable bags. We all know the testimony on the plastic bags. You see them in trees, you see them on the beach, you see them in everywhere. I mean, you see birds are actually making nests out of them, and I know you guys remember the testimony from last year. And, you know, as a state rep from 2 coastal communities, I have seen firsthand the damage that's done to our ocean from plastic bags and to our environment, as all of you have. But I want to throw this out there. We throw away approximately 26,000 tons of plastic bags and plastic film every single year. When you think about how little a plastic bag weighs, to realize that it's 26,000 tons a year, it's almost mind-boggling how many bags we're talking about. So I just want everyone to think about that. Plastic litters our parks, clogs our rivers, oceans, chokes our wildlife. You've all seen the pictures of wildlife being choked by plastic everything. And it ends up breaking down, and we've heard the testimony in this committee before, into these little particles that end up in the ocean. The fish eat them, and then we eat the fish. And so we're all loaded with this stuff. You know, obviously we're doing well with it for now, but it's in our soil, it's in our drinking water. It's really high time. 17 communities have already done this, and maybe more. You know, every year a few more join in. So it is time that we do the statewide ban. I know there's been a hold on this because of the pandemic, and some communities have allowed the plastic to come back because they didn't want to use the reusable bags. But this act will take effect on January 1, 2023. So we are giving plenty of time for people to adjust, for businesses to adjust. I don't think this is an anti-business bill. I think you can be pro-business and pro-environment at the same time. I think that's what we need to be. So you can take a look at the bill. It has all sorts of provisions. It has exceptions. It has, we did take out the fee for the bag, even though most states do charge a fee. We did take it out to try and get it passed, because most of the communities that are doing it in Rhode Island are not charging a fee for the brown bag. But I must say, I was in Boston recently, and you can't even go to J. Crew or, you know, Ann Taylor or any of those, and you have to pay for the bag. It's 5 cents for the bag, which, hey, you know, I'll think about it next time. I didn't even think about it this time, because we don't have such a bill. And, no, it's time to protect our ocean. This is an easy way to do it, and our environment, and I urge you all to pass this year. I can't do this anymore. We shouldn't have to listen to this anymore. This is the right thing to do, and, you know, as hard as it may be on certain businesses that make all this plastic, it's time to adjust to the new normal, and the new normal is we have to protect the planet. So thank you very much, Chairman. I'm open to questions, but I think we have some good witnesses that are about to come on. And thank you, members of the committee.
Thank you. Questions? June, Representative Speakman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to thank Chairwoman McEntee for bringing this bill again and for being such a good champion for this. As you know, I was on the Barrington Town Council when the first municipal bag ban was implemented, and it's spread to many communities in the state. I want to thank you also for including the stitch handle requirement, which really doesn't work without that. So thank you for your stewardship of this. And yes, I agree with you. Let's get it done this year. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, June. we've worked together a lot on this bill.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we're going to go to our first witness, Kevin Boudris from the Conservation Law Foundation. Kevin, you there?
I'm here, Chair Bennett.
Go ahead, the floor is yours, Kevin.
Thank you so much, Chair Bennett, and thank you to the members of the committee. My name is Kevin Boudris, and I'm a staff attorney with Conservation Law Foundation. CLF supports House Bill 5358, and we are grateful to Representative McEntee once again for introducing legislation that would ban single-use plastic bags statewide. As Rep. McEntee said, you shouldn't have to listen to this anymore. This is the right thing to do. It's time. Banning single-use plastic bags is a key step in pushing back against unnecessary and dangerous plastics production, pollution, and waste. As many of you on the committee have heard me testify before, more than 99% of plastics are derived from fossil fuels. Plastics pollute at every stage of their life cycle, and plastics pose a significant risk to our climate. Climate damage and plastics pollution are not two separate crises. They are one and the same. We cannot address climate change or put an end to plastics pollution until we start to turn off the plastics tap and limit the production and use of single-use plastics. And single-use plastic bags are a significant part of the problem here. As Rep. McEntee mentioned, in Rhode Island alone, we're throwing away more than 26,000 tons of plastic bags and plastic film each year. Plastic bags are unrecyclable, and as I'm sure others will testify to tonight, they're dangerous to wildlife, and they're one of the most commonly collected items during beach cleanups. And worst of all, they're entirely unnecessary. Right now, more than half of Rhode Islanders live in a town or city that has banned single-use plastic bags. It's well past time for the rest of the state to catch up. CLF is pleased to see that the bill includes language that defines reusable bags as having stitched handles. This language respects the work done by 16 towns and cities across Rhode Island that have similar language in their own local bag bans. Any suggestion that this language should be taken out is simply an attempt by the plastics industry to sell thicker single-use plastic bags rather than replace them with truly reusable bags. We're also pleased to see that the bill applies not only to brick-and-mortar stores, but also to delivery services like DoorDash or Grubhub and Peapod. It's important to limit exemptions to this ban on single-use plastic bags. We need to do as much as we can, as quickly as we can, to significantly reduce their presence in our lives. And recycling, while important, is not the answer to the plastics problem, especially when it comes to flimsy, unrecyclable plastics like bags and film. False solutions like pyrolysis and gasification, which are often proposed by the plastics and chemical industry so that they can keep on producing as much plastic as possible, are never going to be the answer. The only answer here, the only answer that will protect our communities, our environment, and the climate is to ban single-use plastic bags statewide. Again, CLF supports this bill. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Kevin. Any questions for Kevin? Seeing none, thank you, Kevin. You have a great night. Our next witness will be Dave Mclaughlin from Clean Ocean Access. He's in support. Dave, you there?
Yes, I am.
Go ahead, David.
Thank you very much. Good evening. My name is Dave Mclaughlin from Clean Ocean Access, a local environmental organization focused on marine debris, water quality, and public access. And I was happy to speak in person with you all 2 years ago and bring specific attention to the loophole that could have existed without the stitched handles requirement. And I sincerely appreciate the leadership to create a strong plastic bag bill. We support H5358 legislation. It will effectively address the problem of unnecessary single-use plastic bags that are indeed a source of significant litter, marine debris, and they're sourced from fossil fuels. And as we all take greater action to address the changing climate, we really need to turn off the spigot on runaway single-use plastics, such as plastic bags, and really think about using fossil fuels in the most responsible manner for future generations instead of just creating more plastic. Again, fortunately, because of the great leadership of the town of Barrington in 2012, we've now got over 17 communities in Rhode Island. Over 55% of the population have eliminated plastic bags. And we really have seen quick adoption towards using reusable bags, despite perhaps a small uptick in paper. Everyone moves towards reusables, and it's great. It's catching on, and people are moving towards other efforts as well. I do just want to call attention, and I'm going to be brief in my remarks, to two parts of the bill. I just want to applaud again the definition to include stitched handles, but we always have to be mindful of the fact that someday we might have to adjust that, and always think that, you know, a reusable bag is something that a customer brings to the store. It's not something that's provided from the store. So I appreciate the definition. Just call attention, we might have to adjust it. And also on the uniformity side, I really want to emphasize that the local effort allowed us to get to this point. So perhaps putting the state law as the floor would allow the local communities to continue with local efforts to tackle plastic pollution and really build up that residential and political will. Thank you again to Representative McEntee, all the bill sponsors, and Chairperson Bennett for working together to move this forward. I really request the committee to consider moving this forward, and perhaps it could be something to showcase as plastic bag legislation for the governor to sign for Earth Day next month. So thank you for your time, and I'd be happy to address any questions.
That sounds good. I shut my mic off and it's on. Any questions?
Chairman?
Yes.
Just a comment. I just want to say we did work very hard on making sure we have the stitch handle, and that makes a big difference. But I also want to mention that the fact that we do a statewide ban with or without the uniformity clause is so important, because I have two coastal towns, South Kingstown and Narragansett. South Kingstown has a wonderful plastic bag ban. Narragansett does not have one. Now, there isn't a person in South Kingstown or Narragansett that doesn't go back and forth between the two towns, and Kathy can attest to that as well. And it's kind of shocking. You go to the CVS in South Kingstown, and you get a paper bag or you bring your own bag. You go to the CVS in Narragansett, which is, what can it be, 3 miles away? And you get a plastic bag. So it's time to stop this, you know, and like I said, everybody's so close. So I'm sure there's plenty of towns that have the same issue, but it's just kind of crazy, you know?
Sounds
Thank
crazy
you.
to me. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much, Dave. You have a great night. Our next,
Thank you.
You're welcome. Our next witness is Jonathan Barad from Clean Water Action in support. Jonathan, you there?
I am here, Chair.
Go ahead, Jonathan, we're listening.
All right, great. Thank you, Chair Bennett, members of the committee. My name is John Berard. I am the Rhode Island State Director for Clean Water Action. I speak today on behalf of our nearly 20,000 members here in Rhode Island. Clean Water Action supports H5358. We urge the committee's passage. In 2018, I was asked by Governor Raimondo to serve as the co-chair for her task force to tackle plastic pollution. Over the course of 5 months, we worked collaboratively to identify ways to reduce plastic pollution here in Rhode Island. And in that time, a number of policy solutions were identified, many of which have been heard by this committee already this session, and I've testified on. But the centerpiece legislation to come out of this task force, and the one recommended to and supported by the governor, was a statewide ban on single-use plastic bags. I discussed at length all the problems associated with plastic bags in my written testimony, and my two colleagues who went before laid a lot of that out as well. And those of you who are veterans on the committee have heard me discuss this many times. So I just want to say a couple things real quickly. Our municipalities have led the way on this issue, and at present, well over half of Rhode Islanders live in a community with existing bag bills. They've also done the hard work, as Representative Speakman spoke about, of closing up those initial loopholes, particularly by requiring stitch-handled bags, and that hard work is reflected in this bill. This bill has overwhelming support from our members, has overwhelming support from Rhode Islanders. It passed the Senate last year. It's poised to pass again this year, and I agree with Rep. McEntee. It is well past time. The only amendment that we request is in the uniformity language. As I mentioned, the municipalities have been the innovators on this issue. They are the ones who are responsible for the collection, management, and disposal of the waste and litter generated by their residents, and so they should be able to pass laws to manage that waste in the best way that they see fit. So this law should set the minimum statewide requirements, not the maximum, and should allow towns and cities to deal with any new issues that may arise over time. So with that, I want to thank Rep. McEntee for her 4 years of leadership on this issue, as well as the bill's co-sponsors. We urge passage strongly and swiftly, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions for this witness? Seeing none or hearing none. Thank you very much for your testimony. You have a wonderful weekend.
Thanks, and you all.
Our next witness is Zachary Taylor from American Recyclable Plastics, who is opposed to the bill. Mr. Taylor, are you there?
Yes, Chairman.
Okay, you're testifying in front of the Environment and Natural Resources Committee on House Bill 5358 on plastic bags. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, members of the committee, for the opportunity to speak with you this evening. My name is Zachary Taylor. I'm the director of the American Recyclable Plastic Bag Alliance, which represents the U.S. manufacturers and recyclers of plastic bags, an industry that supports thousands of families across the United States. Our members pioneered the store take-back program with retailers, convenient bins near the front of stores to return and recycle plastic bags and films, have a desire to ensure that bags do not go to the landfill after a single use. Our members and other companies buy what's collected back from retailers and turn these materials into new bags, railroad ties, composite lumber, asphalt, and more. Given a nationwide shortage of both paper bags and reusable bags, HB 5358 could increase operating costs for restaurants, retail stores, and grocery stores at a time when many businesses are struggling. Further, we think that this ban could also represent a hurdle to a strong economic recovery from the pandemic, given that these bag shortages are expected to last for several years. The bill's mandate that bags have stitched handles means consumers and stores will transition to alternative bags made almost exclusively in Southeast Asia by manufacturers in some of the world's worst polluting countries. This is due, again, to the mandate that bags have stitched handles. The stitch handles for these bags also, which these bags are overwhelmingly made of plastic as well, cannot be recycled in the United States. We would suggest that the committee consider amending the bill to eliminate the stitch handles requirement and instead define reusable bags based on the language in the Rhode Island Task Force to Tackle Plastics final report, which recommended legislation to define reusable bags based on durability. As noted, these bags with stitch handles are made from plastics like woven and non-woven polypropylene, nylon, or polyester, and given the decades-long migration of America's textile industry, they're made overseas. According to life cycle assessments of carry-out bags, these stitched handle products require significantly more reuses to offset their larger environmental impacts due to the increased resources, energy, and emissions involved in their production, manufacture, and transport, without any added performance benefits. California established the first statewide definition for reusable plastic bags. Their standard based on scientific testing mandates that bags be certified as at least 2.25 mils in thickness and capable of 125 or more uses carrying 22 or more pounds over a distance of 175 feet. Reusable plastic film bags are allowed under statewide bag bans all over the country, including in Washington, Oregon, Maine, Delaware, and Connecticut. Critically, reusable plastic film bags are 100% recyclable through the store take-back programs that ARPBA members pioneered. Again, stitch handle bags cannot be recycled in the United States as a direct result of the stitching. Consumers often discard these plastic bags when they become soiled or contaminated well before they've been reused enough times to offset their larger environmental impact. We believe this bill misses the mark by forcing Rhode Island businesses and consumers to use bags that cannot be recycled in the United States, have greater environmental impacts, and are more expensive to acquire. We encourage the committee to consider amending the bill to allow for any reusable bag that can meet use and durability standards, including reusable plastic film bags. Thank you very much for your time and consideration. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Are there any questions for this witness? Seeing none. Thank you very much, Mr. Taylor. Have a wonderful weekend. Our next witness is Meg Kerr from the Audubon Society of Rhode Island. Good evening, Ms. Kerr. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Good. Floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Chair, members of the committee, my name is Meg Kerr. I'm the Director of Policy at the Audubon Society of Rhode Island, and we support Rep. McEntee's Bill 5358, the plastic waste reduction bill. I just wanted to say a few words about why Audubon and our 17,000 members care about plastic bags and other plastic waste. We have worked for decades to draw attention to plastic waste in the environment and have worked on legislation probably also for decades, to eliminate single-use plastic bags and other items. And the real reason why Audubon is in the business of advocating against plastic is that it harms birds and other wildlife, as Rep. McEntee mentioned. Audubon is Rhode Island's oldest environmental organization, and we were founded in 1897 by people who were gravely concerned about the slaughter of birds for their feathers to go into women's hats. And to this day, our members care passionately about birds, and the birds that they care about are being affected by plastic pollution. Birds of all types incorporate plastic trash into their nests. We love our ospreys here in Rhode Island, those large coastal birds. We have volunteers that monitor osprey nests. And ospreys incorporate all kinds of plastic trash into their nests. In New Jersey, conservation biologists documented plastic shovels, polyester hats, and flags in osprey nests. But the worst items are the single-use plastic bags or other plastic sheeting because they can choke or smother the birds. We were an active participant in the Governor's Task Force to Tackle Plastics, and we are in full support of this bill. We're pleased to have the stitched handle language in the bill. We do not want thick plastic bags to be replacing the thin plastic bags, which would be allowed without that language. We also are pleased to have language to encourage retailers to make reusable bags available to the public, providing support for low-income households. We understand that low-income families may not have the expendable income needed to purchase the reusable bags. And so we appreciate the effort to minimize that burden. Thank you very much for putting this bill forward, and we hope it will pass this year. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Meg. Any questions for Ms. Kerr? Seeing none. Thank you, Meg. You have a good weekend. We'll talk to you later.
Thank you.
Our last verbal testimony is from Jed Thorpe from Save the Bay. Jed, are you there?
I'm here. Thank you, Rep. Phillips and members of the committee. My name is Jed Thorpe, and I'm the advocacy coordinator at Save the Bay. This is, I believe, the third year that we've testified in support of a statewide ban on single-use plastic bags. And I'll admit I don't really have a lot new to say from what we've said in the past. By now, hopefully you've all heard that plastics and single-use plastic bags specifically are a growing problem for Rhode Island's environment. You've heard me testify in the past that our volunteers remove thousands and thousands of plastic bags from the Rhode Island coastline each and every year. The folks at Clean Ocean Access remove thousands as well, and you heard from John Berard a bit ago, and he's testified in the past about the samples that they've taken, which have found microplastics in rivers, lakes, and streams all around the state. The problem is real, and it's only going to get worse if we don't take action. The other theme that I hope you've heard in the testimony on various plastic bills is the importance of keeping these items out of the waste stream to begin with. I think we've all heard the phrase reduce, reuse, recycle, and those words are listed in order of importance and priority, because reducing the number of these items that get used in the first place is a much better strategy than trying to deal with the problem on the back end, whether it's trying to find space for them at the landfill or cleaning them up from our beaches. I want to commend Representative McEntee for not just her leadership on this issue, but also her patience. We supported this bill in 2019, and we hoped that it would pass then. I frankly think it would have passed last year had it not been for the pandemic, and this year the House and Senate bills match. Issues about stitched handles and others have, for the most part, been resolved. And, you know, there are some things that we would have ideally liked to see in the bill, but politics is about compromise. So we're optimistic that this is the year that it finally becomes law. As others have noted, over half the residents in the state already live in a community with a local plastic bag ban, and the transition away from single-use bags in those communities has gone fairly well by all accounts. In closing, I want to just briefly note our support for Representative Carson's resolution, H5524, regarding solar siting mapping. We won't be giving separate verbal testimony on it, but we strongly support it as well. So thank you, Representative, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Thorpe? Chairwoman McEntee.
Thank you, Vice Chair Phillips. This is a compromise, and anybody who's heard this bill for the 4 or 5 years knows that it is. And it is time to get it passed, but I just want to correct one statement I said, that this act will take effect within 1 year from the date of promulgation of regulations by the department as authorized by this chapter, or no later than January 1, 2023, whichever occurs first. So I just wanted to correct that statement that it was going to be like this, that it wouldn't take effect until January 2023. It could take effect sooner, but that's the time limit. But thank you, everyone, and the time has come, the walrus said, and we know where that comes from, and I'm not going to repeat that again. But thank you, everyone, and thank you for the witnesses, and have a great night.
Any other questions for this witness? Mr. Thorpe, I just want to put one comment in on myself. A couple of years ago, I was teaching engineering at a middle school, and we had presentations on how much plastic pollutions were in the ocean and that, and the kids were really, really into the subject matter, and they signed a petition. Over 300 out of the 500 and approximately 550 signed the petition to get rid of the single-use bags and the single-use plastic straws. So even the kids are in favor of this one.
Yeah, thank you, Rep, for that comment. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. You have a wonderful weekend, Mr. Thorpe. Thank you for testifying.
Thank you as well.
Thank you. That concludes the verbal testimony on Bill 5358. We have written testimony from the Rhode Island League of Cities and Towns, which has concerns, but didn't say they were pro or opposed to it. They just had concerns. We have other ones. Kate Weymouth, who is for the bill. Kate Whittingham has concerns. American Recyclable Plastic Bag Alliance has concerns. Audubon Society is for the bill. Nature Conservancy is for. Clean Ocean Access is for. Clean Water Action is for. Rhode Island Food Dealers Association is against. Gianna Solito is for. Surf Rider Foundation is for with an amendment or two. Laura Westberg is for. Jennifer Whiting is for. Save the Bay is for. DEM is for. Adriana McMahon is for. Treasurer Seth Magaziner is for. American Forest and Paper has no position, but they did submit written testimony. And the last one is the Consumer Law Foundation, which is for. And you can read all of these written testimony on the homepage. Lower right-hand corner says committee documents, and then you just check on environment and natural resources. And with that, that concludes the hearing on House Bill H5358. Back to you, Chairman.
Thank you. Our next bill will be 5924 by Representative Carson. It's an act relating to health and safety, environmental justice focus areas. Representative Carson.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman. And I introduced this bill because I wanted to have a discussion and bring to the attention of the committee and perhaps some of our other members a situation in Newport that's going on that I think is repeating itself in other areas of the state. And I think it's something that we should be aware of. I know that there is a little bit of criticism that what I'm about to describe to you is only happening in Newport, but I have pretty good information. It's maybe happening in other areas of the state, particularly East Providence and Providence as well. And that is that there's a particular site in Newport that's coastal that's going to be developed, and it turns out that it has formerly been a site for dumping of toxic materials. And so what happens in that situation is that DEM comes in according to their regulations, and they do a site investigation report, and they ask the developer to come in and to give a response as to how they're going to deal with the materials that are there. And that's all well and good that that's happening. But the thing that concerned me and why I got brought into it was because my constituents felt that they didn't really have access to information. They learned sort of accidentally that there were toxic materials there. They didn't feel as though they had been given the information in a timely way as to what exactly was going on at the site. They feel as though they have had to, and they came to me and they said, we can't get information, can you help me find it? And I want to be clear that DEM has been very helpful. But I think the thing that concerns me is that the transparency requirements in this bill are regulatory. And since they are regulatory, as you know, they can change with future administrations. And so what I wanted to bring to the attention of the committee was that in a situation where there's going to be development on a toxic waste site, be it coastal or be it particularly in an environmental justice area, which we know that probably exists, particularly in South Providence. There are some areas like that there really needs to be a transparent process. There needs to be notification of the neighbors that there's going to be development at this site within a certain distance. There needs to be materials developed with the neighbors so they can participate in the process. There needs to be community meetings that they are invited to so that they can go and learn what's going on and make appropriate public comments which they're able to do, because once the site remediation plan is ready, the public can comment on it. But the public needs to know that they can comment on it, right? But so if nobody really tells them what's going on, then they'll never really know they had the opportunity to comment. The last thing that it does is after the public comments are made, the developer of the property has to respond with what his or her plan is for the site. And currently at the Newport site, we're waiting now 6 months for the developer to respond. And when I asked DEM how long this developer had to respond, because the community is waiting to hear what his plan is to deal with these materials, there's no timeline for him or her to respond. They can take 10 years if they want to respond. And so what I've done is I've required that they respond within 90 days. That way citizens can really understand and be part of the dialogue. So, again, this came out of a particular incident here in Newport. I have spoken to people in East Providence. They have similar situations up there. This particular site here in Newport is a coastal site, so the bill speaks to coastal development because I believe there's some toxic coastal sites around the bay, but I also included environmental justice communities because I'm concerned that there might be some development in environmental justice communities where there had previously been some waste buried, particularly buried. So that's what this bill is about, and I thought that I would bring it to your attention and, see if we could just talk about it a little bit.
Thank you, Representative. Any questions for Representative Carlson? Seeing none, sounds good, Representative Carlson. Our first witness will be Charles Donahue. He's a retired resident of Newport. He's in favor of this bill. Mr. Donahue, you there?
Yes.
This is Representative Bennett. You're in front of the House Committee on Environment and Natural Resources. Go right ahead with your testimony.
Well, thank you, Representative Bennett. Thank you for the House Committee on the Environment and Natural Resources. Congratulations on looking at this important bill on justice focus areas. There's a lot of us now concerned with the rising sea storms in hazardous waste areas. I live in Newport on a wharf called Coddington Wharf. It's next to Waits Wharf. They're together. And we had a site investigation report done last year. And when they did the report, they did borings in 6 different locations. And they came up with 15 toxic chemicals that were above the standard of the Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management's residential hazardous ranking. So that immediately meant they had to study that area where the borings was. There was 10% of Waits Wharf was studied. They're now beginning the remediation study period. The process requires public comments, and about 21 of us submitted our comments to the Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management. That was beginning the process of remediation. What's unique about this area of Waits Wharf, it's on sea level on a floodplain. And the Coastal Resources Management Agency has already told us that we can expect 3 to 4 foot ocean surges blowing all the ocean water right up beyond our area onto what is called Southern Thames Street, a large part of Newport's economy, and also into the Fifth Ward. We've been told that's going to happen without a hurricane. We're very, very concerned about hurricanes because of the $60 billion of damage in the Gulf last year and the 185-mile-per-hour winds for 24 hours that occurred on the Atlantic side last year. So the bottom line of it is our concern is with these chemicals moving up into the other parts of Newport. The chemicals that we found were from the Newport gas, which burned coal. It provided Newport with street lights and home lights, and they burned coal, and when they were through with it, they had coal ash, and they wanted to dump it someplace. Nobody knew how dangerous it was, but Coddington Wharf and Waste Wharf were extended because they were looking for something to fulfill. The coal ash produces arsenic, lead, cyanide, and mercury. It's sitting out there right next to us right now at 3, 5, and 12 feet. It's the same chemicals that were found in Tiverton in 2000. Those chemicals came from coal ash also from the Fall River gasification plant. They just dumped it in Tiverton. They then built 100 houses on it. The State Department of Environmental Management found it. The people whose houses were polluted sued the owner of the land and got $12 million to take 2 feet of toxic soils out. That's how they developed that. It wasn't on the ocean. There was no threat of spreading them. So our number one concern right now is, can these chemicals be spread with serious health consequences and serious economic consequences? Because once all of this chemicals get spread in water, the water recedes, but these toxic chemicals remain in the houses. The cyanide, arsenic, lead, mercury, vinyl chloride stay behind. All the pubs, the restaurants, the businesses, and the homes could be valueless. So the EPA has warned us as they go into these situations after the fact, after the damage has been done. They say, if you can find a place where the bomb hasn't gone off, try to move. We believe Waits Wharf is a time bomb. We're lucky it hasn't been set off yet, but we really appreciate what the Department of Environmental Management is doing right now, which is to study it, and they're working with the fellow who owns the land. One of our problems right now is the first stage was we wrote our comments. The second stage is the owner of the land responded to our comments. We are no longer part of the process. It's between the owner and the Department of Environmental Management to work through stage 2, where they look at his comments on all of the letters and the department's questions. They then tell him to change things, and they try to come up with a remediation. We're not involved in the remediation. That's a concern that we have. We'd like to be able to get involved. A second issue is they already studied 10% of the wharf. We've been asking them, could you please study all of the wharf? Because if all these toxic chemicals found in 10% exist on the rest of the wharf, it's even a more catastrophic time bomb. We can't find anybody. We go around to state agencies and EPA. We don't know how to get people to come in and finish doing the toxic study called the Site Investigation Report. So we think what Representative Carson has done is at least possibly open some doors for those of us who are concerned about our kids, our grandkids, and we're concerned about the city of Newport. This is a threat to the whole city if these things ever happen. Now, there are other places in Rhode Island where they burned coal. They're not on the ocean necessarily with the spread, but these are things that have to be found. And often, if you have people who live in the area, know the history of the area, and can bring it forward, it can be a valuable contribution to the state agencies on whether they should study these things or not. So I'll stop there and answer any questions you may have. I'm sorry if it wasn't clear enough, but I'd be very happy to go back and talk over any of these points that you may have a question on.
You were very clear, Mr. Donahue, and I appreciate your passion for this. Anybody have questions? Yes, Representative Cortman.
Thank you. I appreciate the witness's testimony. I do have a question. Rep. Carson's bill would ensure that the community is notified, but is there any provision of, now that we all know now that these chemicals exist and presumably there's a work plan, but what's the timing on the work plan? And is there any provision in the bill, Rep. Carson, that once the community's notified, everybody's notified now that these toxic chemicals exist, if they didn't do anything with the land, are those chemicals stabilized, or could we still have a problem if we have a big hurricane? Even
Right. We did not address that, but you raise a really good point. So like perhaps these sites don't get developed. They're identified as being toxic. There's a site remediation plan. The developer decides not to develop it. The chemicals are still there. Yeah, that's a problem. I mean, I just started looking into this. Maybe we need to, maybe I need to go look at where these sites are. They're probably identified around the state. Seems like something worth looking into. I also wanted to comment that in working with Mr. Donahue, I asked him how he learned that this site was even toxic, because there had been a community of folks in Newport that were following this development process and the licensing and the zoning issues. And the way he learned about the waste there was at a planning board meeting that he just happened to go to. So if he didn't go to the planning board meeting, he might never have learned that there were these specific issues there, which I think is, what I'm trying to avoid here. People, if they don't read the paper that day and they don't go to one meeting, they may not hear about this, which is why I'm really looking for notification in this bill and engagement and transparency.
Did I understand the testimony properly that the witness and maybe his group of neighbors, they actually paid for the study? Did I understand that properly?
Charles, are you still there?
Yes. The site investigation report was done by Mr. Abruzzi, who owns the land. And he had Sage Environmental, a first-rate company in Pawtucket. They did the study. It's a high-quality study. And so he was required to do this study on 10% of the property. So when he came up with his results, that started the remediation process. Now, the end result of remediation probably is you cap it. You say, okay, all those toxic chemicals are there, we're going to cap it. The second thing you can do is what they did in Tiverton. They went and they took all the toxic chemicals out of there so they could never spread. They're not going to spread in Tiverton, even though they're not on a harbor and there's no river there. They just were under the houses. So there is going to be an issue coming up in the future. Is it safe to cap toxic chemicals that are going to be pounded by hurricanes, pounded by oceans? Hurricanes destroy buildings. They can take a cap and destroy it real quick. So if all of those chemicals get loose in a big storm, that's the danger we're trying to avoid.
Yeah,
I understand. Thank you.
It's a serious problem.
Yes.
Thank you, Charles.
Thank you very much for your work.
Thank you. Any further questions? Representative McEntee.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to say to Rep. Carson that this is a great bill. We have a similar issue in South Kingstown where it was contaminated land, or at least thought to be contaminated land. Now everybody's arguing about that, but the solar company came in, cleared the entire acreage. I think it was, they were only supposed to clear about 5 or 6, and they ended up clearing like 10 or 12. They now have to replace all the trees that they shouldn't have taken down. Now we're in the process of talking about a tree farm in town and replacing some of these trees, because as we all know, the trees are what suck up the carbon dioxide and from the cities. And we have so many down in South Kingstown and many of the rural areas. But it would be great to have, I like this bill, so people would be able to look and see where these sites are, where these solar farms are, and how many acres are we clearing before we clear too many. So I want to thank you for this bill, and I like it.
Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none? Thank you, Mr. Donahue. I appreciate.
Thank you very much.
Your passion,
Thank you
and
for your work.
I will be thinking of you when this bill is spoken about. That concludes the verbal testimony on this bill. Written testimony can be found on the website, the homepage, bottom right-hand corner under Documents. DEM has concerns. Laura Westberg is for the bill. National Grid has concerns. And Jordan Guyette is for the bill. That concludes the testimony of 5924. Our next bill is 5762, an act relating to public utility carriers, renewable energy standard, by Representative Ruggiero. Go ahead, Representative.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee. Appreciate you hearing the Renewable Energy Standard Bill. In 2004, the Rhode Island General Assembly passed the Renewable Energy Standard, basically saying that electric distribution companies, National Grid, had to buy a percentage of their retail electric sales from renewable energy sources, whether it's solar, wind, wave, biomass. So this bill extends the current law. In 2022, the Renewable Energy Standard would increase to comply with a goal of 100% by 2030. And this does allow the PUC to set levels from 2023 to 2030. How this works is National Grid and other entities, obligated entities, meet the compliance by purchasing renewable energy certificates. They're called RECs, and they represent like 1 megawatt hour of renewable energy generated and delivered to the electric grid. The RECs are sort of the accounting system, if you will, because National Grid doesn't make electricity, it distributes it. So this law asks them to buy a percentage of their electricity from renewable sources. There's a regional REC program that Grid and other electric entities buy from. So if Grid is basically obligated, and any obligated entity, they buy and how they sell their power into Rhode Island. So if they sell 100 megawatts per hour and the rate is 50%, then they have to buy 50% of these renewable energy credits. Why is this important? Because if a developer is going to invest in a renewable energy project in the state, he or she wants to know that the state's in the game and that National Grid will buy these renewable energy credits. It signals long-term investment for our state, so it is economic development, and certainly it's been a lot of jobs over the past decade. State policy like this with these kinds of goals helps drive down the cost of renewables, and anybody following has seen that renewable energy costs have really drastically fallen in the past decade, in part because of the Renewable Energy Standard. And with the Rhode Island voters just last week approving the bond question number 7, which includes the $20 million, to build out Pier 1 over Aquonset for the staging of a lot of the offshore wind projects. That's how many states, including Rhode Island, will get the percentages of renewable energy. Offshore wind will be a pretty big driver of that. So that's essentially the bill and a little bit of history behind the bill. And I thank you for listening. And I know we have a number of really smart environmental advocates who are here to testify. I'm happy to answer any questions, but they're way smarter than I am.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
We'll go to our first witness, which is Sue Andubois. Hi, Sue, you there?
I'm here.
How you doing? This is Rep. Bennett.
Yeah.
The floor is yours.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chairman and members of the committee, and especially thank you to Representative Deborah Giro for sponsoring this bill. My name is Sue Anderbois. I am with the Nature Conservancy, and the Nature Conservancy strongly supports House Bill 5762, the Renewable Energy Standard. I'll be quick because I also submitted written testimony, but also available to answer any questions. But just want to point out that the Renewable Energy Standard is a really essential part of meeting Rhode Island's climate goals, especially as we continue to move to further electrification of things like electric cars and move to electrify our heating systems. The Renewable Energy Standard is a really common sense policy. More than 50 states across the country have renewable energy standards, and I'm going to point you actually to my colleague Kai's testimony that's written from the Green Energy Consumers Alliance. They have a really great chart that kind of spells out where other ones are set. So I'm also going to point out that it aligns well with President Biden's a goal to have 100% electricity generated by renewable sources by 2035. And I'll just point out that the Nature Conservancy is committed to working with the sponsor and others on this bill and would love to see it passed. So we strongly support it. We respectfully request that you pass it out of committee, and I'm available for questions now or anytime in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing, oh yes, Representative Knight.
Hi, Sue. How are you?
Good.
My question is it doable, this bill? Can we get to 100% by 2030? And can you elaborate? If the answer is yes or no, can you just take a minute and maybe elaborate?
Yeah, no, thank you for that question, Representative Knight. And I really do believe that this is doable. And I think part of making it doable is actually setting a strong goal, enforceable goal like the Renewable Energy Standard, because it sends a strong signal to the developing community about that the fact that Rhode Island is open for business for this kind of long-term investment, that they're saying we want to meet 100% of our electricity goals in this way, and we're setting up the process. So the renewable energy credits that Representative Ruggiero mentioned earlier are part of what makes the projects, the projects work. It's a part of the financing mechanism of renewable projects. So by setting these strong goals, we're also supporting the development of more renewables. And also, I think Kai's going to mention this, but with the upcoming offshore wind that's already been announced off the coast of Rhode Island, will already be, according to the Office of Energy Resources, about 80% of the way there, just with those resources coming online. So I do think it's doable. I really wouldn't advocate for this if I didn't think it was doable and achievable. But we need policies like this in order to get there.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you, Ms. Sandoval.
Thank you so much.
Our next witness will be Kai Salem from the Green Energy Consumers. Hi, Kai, you there?
Hi, yes, I am, Chairman.
And the floor is yours.
Thanks so much, Chair, and thank you to Rep. Ruggiero for sponsoring this important bill. My name is Kai Salem. I'm the Policy Coordinator at Green Energy Consumers Alliance. We're a nonprofit based in Rhode Island and Massachusetts, and we work to accelerate the transition to a low-carbon future. I'm testifying in support of H5762, a bill to extend the renewable energy standard to 100% by 2030. This bill is one of our top priorities this session. The bill would implement the meaningful and doable goal of 100% renewable electricity, and it would make Rhode Island a leader in an area in which we have fallen behind since passing one of the first ever renewable energy standards back in 2004. The Renewable Energy Standard is perhaps most important as a tracking and accountability mechanism. It makes sure that we're actually keeping track of all of our renewable energy and getting credit for the renewable energy that we're producing. Rhode Island currently has a big surplus of renewable energy. The most recent report on the Renewable Energy Standard revealed that we have 15% more renewable energy certificates than we need. So we just need to, at a bare minimum, increase the renewable energy standard to soak up some of that surplus of renewable energy in the market, and also get credit for all of the important renewable energy programs that we have developed that are driving a strong renewable energy industry in our state. Second, we need this bill as the foundational policy to get to the doable 100% by 2030 renewable energy goal. This goal is a great way to meet our overall climate goals. It's in line with federal plans, as Sue mentioned, to decarbonize, and it will accelerate the decarbonization of our other sectors like heating and transportation. In my written testimony, I explained that with our existing renewable energy programs and procurements, we are currently forecasted to get 82% of the way to the 100% goal. That is through 2 upcoming offshore wind projects and procurements, which will provide cheap electricity to our state, as well as a lot of great jobs within offshore wind. It's also in addition to our solar programs and our important electric energy efficiency programs, which reduce the overall electricity we need. Of course, there is an 18% gap there, as you will notice, but I am confident that with expected technology and policy advancements, as well as the entire country moving towards this goal over the coming decade, we will be able to get to the 100% renewable electricity goal by 2030. This fact was confirmed by a study by the Brattle Group and Office of Energy Resources, which came out just a couple of months ago. That report has so much information on how we can meet this goal, the many different pathways, and how to do it most cost effectively. So I hope you all get a chance to review that. So in conclusion, this bill is a great example of the type of ambitious but doable policy that will enable Rhode Island to meet our climate goals and become a national leader on clean energy once again. I'm happy to take any questions. Again, this is one of our top priorities and a big focus of green energy consumers. So we thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Any questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you, Kai. Our next witness is Meg Kerr from the Audubon Society. Hi, Meg, you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Hi, Meg. Rep Bennett. Go right ahead.
Thank you, Chair Bennett. Members of the committee, my comments will be very brief. I just wanted to add the Audubon Society of Rhode Island. I'm the policy director there. I would like to add us to the voices in support of this bill, the Renewable Energy Standard 5762. Last year, in the middle of the pandemic, the Audubon Society redid our strategic plan. We did about 50 interviews with stakeholders around the state, and the final plan was approved by our board last June. And the plan directs Audubon to focus all of our resources on the climate crisis. And this bill, with its direction to rapidly decarbonize our economy, is a critical step in addressing the crisis, and that is why we support it. Thank you very much. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Meg. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much, Meg. You have a nice night. Our next witness is Hank Webster from the Acadia Center. Hank, you there?
I am here, Chair Bennett. How are you?
Good. You go right ahead, Hank.
Thank you. My name is Hank Webster. I'm the Rhode Island director of Acadia Center. We are a clean energy research and advocacy organization, a nonprofit that operates throughout the Northeast. And not much to add than to what my excellent colleagues have said before. We support, it is achievable. This is great for Rhode Island. It creates jobs. It cleans our energy resources. It makes us more resilient because we're generating more of our own electricity locally and don't need to rely as much on transmission of energy to our state from other states. So this is a win all around, and we're on track to be pretty close already. So with this addition to statute and having a statewide goal enshrined in the law, we can definitely put our shoulder to the effort and get all the way there. And it's also important that we make sure this extends beyond 2030 as well. So if anyone is looking for one potential addition to legislation, go right at the end of the current edition, and it could say, and will remain in compliance beyond 2030 or something like that. I think the language infers that, or implies that rather. But certainly, it always benefits from being made clear. That doesn't need to happen this year. We can come back and address it in outer years as well. I'm happy to answer any questions. Again, we support this bill strongly, even as it is written currently. So, thank you.
Thank you, Hank. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you. Have a great night.
You too.
Our next witness is Jeremy McDermott. He's from Northeast Energy Center. Jeremy, turn down your device.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
How you doing? Go ahead.
I'm well.
We can hear
Thank you very much again for the opportunity to testify, Chair Bennett and members of the committee. Again, I'm Jeremy McDermott, VP for Policy at the Northeast Clean Energy Council. And just to echo what has already been said, this is the right direction for Rhode Island. It is achievable, and it sets a tone for a decade of action in clean energy and climate for the 2020s. I will note that while this sets an important big picture framework for Rhode Island, it does not supplant the need to continue to support programs and specific policies that will allow local clean energy activity. In short, we need to continue to do the daily work of investing in energy efficiency through least cost procurement, renewable energy through RE growth, net metering, and large-scale procurements, and other clean energy strategies to boost the clean energy economy in Rhode Island. And we need to do all this while pursuing strategies for environmental justice and racial equity along the way. I'll note that the December 2020 report from the Brattle Group to the Office of Energy Resources lays out a number of scenarios in which the state can achieve and importantly maintain the 100% renewable energy standard. And it recognizes that in-state resources have generally more positive impacts because of the local economic boost associated with in-state deployment. The last thing I'll say is that we note that the committee should also be mindful of the critical infrastructure needs to support the clean energy grid, and connecting energy sources quickly and efficiently has become a huge challenge in New England, and particularly in Rhode Island, as well as neighboring Massachusetts, and want to keep your eyes on that. So at the end of the day, this is an extremely important part of the clean energy puzzle, and it represents a framework that sets Rhode Island in the right direction, and we urge you to move it forward. And with that, I will stop and be happy to answer questions. Thank you so much.
Any questions for this witness? Seeing none, Jeremy, thank you. Have a great night. Be safe.
Thank you so much. Be well. Thank you very much.
Our next witness is Christian Roseland. No affiliation. Noted. Christian, you're there. Hello, Christian.
Yes, I sure am. Thank you.
How you doing, Rep Bennett? Go ahead. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Chairman Bennett and members of the committee, for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Christian Roseland, and I'm here to testify in favor of H 5762. I'm a writer and editor. I spent a decade writing about solar energy for a trade publication, and I currently serve as the editorial director for the foremost think tank on the energy transition in the United States, RMI. I'm not here to testify on behalf of RMI, but my experience does inform my testimony. I also want to know that I'm available to answer questions on solar panels per Rep. Kennedy's bill, H5525. Most kinds of solar panels do not contain significant amounts of toxic chemicals. The ones that do, the thin film panels made by First Solar, are recycled through a dedicated program. And while recycling is a good thing, unlike the other issues that we've heard about tonight, expired solar panels are simply not an urgent environmental issue. What is an urgent environmental issue is climate change. Climate change is an existential threat to our state and to future generations. This includes my 10-year-old son, all of your children, and all of the children in our state. The electricity sector is the key to removing emissions from all the other sectors. Transportation and buildings are right now our biggest emitters, and in order to decarbonize those, we need to electrify them. So moving to 100% renewables in our electricity sector, as this bill proposes, is fundamental to cleaning our whole economy. As to Representative Knight's question a few callers back, yes, this is doable. While 100% by 2030 is an ambitious target, we have the resources to do this. Between the sunlight on our real estate and the wind in the waters of Long Island Sound, we have enough power to fully run our state. And as a small part of the ISO New England grid, we can import and export power as needed to match supply and demand. This bill also has the flexibility to get clean power from outside our state, which is an important consideration given how densely populated we are. But what I really want to talk about is jobs. This is probably going to be the biggest impact that all of us see in the near term if this bill passes. The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics expects that wind turbine techs and solar installers will be the #1 and #3 fastest growing occupations over the next decade. The offshore wind industry promises to revitalize our ports in a major way, and there will be jobs created in the assembly, installation, and maintenance of wind turbines. We can also expect to see a lot more small companies in both the solar and wind industries. These are good jobs. The Bureau of Labor Statistics says that the median 2019 wage for a wind turbine tech was $53,000 a year, and for a solar installer, $45,000. You don't need a college degree for either of these, but I do expect a lot of jobs for college grads, too, in engineering, design, and other aspects of this. I've been trying to figure out exactly how many jobs this will create, and the estimates vary, but basically we're talking about tens of thousands of jobs for our state. So if for no other reason, that's a great reason to pass this bill. If passed, this bill will make Rhode Island a national leader in decarbonizing our power supply, but I do want to note that our work will not be done with this policy. We will still need to fix National Grid's extremely slow, chaotic, and unpredictable process for interconnecting renewable energy facilities. And with climate change making weather patterns more unpredictable and severe, and with the electrification of heating and transport, we're going to need to build a more resilient, reliable power supply than what we're currently getting. This bill does not address these things, but I don't expect one bill to do everything. This, what we have in front of you, is the biggest piece of the puzzle for acting on climate. As such, I cannot express enough my support for this bill and my gratitude to the sponsors, especially Representative Ruggiero, Representatives Potter and Handy, for your vision.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much, Christian. You have a great night.
Thank you.
Our next witness is Eric Beecher, Soul Power Solar. Mr. Beecher, you there?
Yes.
Mr. Beecher, we have your written testimony, so be brief and to the point. Thank you. The floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Chairman and the committee. My name is Eric Beecher. I'm the president of Soul Power Solar Installation. Hi, everyone, again. We're a Rhode Island-based solar installation company. We are in favor of this bill and promoting more renewables on our grid.
We got one. And then
Sorry? Yeah, the question was asked, is this possible? The price of utility scale solar has come down 89% over the past decade. So I think that's a good indicator of what is possible in the renewables energy and how much can really change over the course of 10 years. And we just want to thank everyone for the support they've put into renewable legislation and want to continue to support renewable legislation and to make sure that as much as possible that the development that comes along with this will happen in Rhode Island so that we can make sure that the utility savings that come along with this, the job creation, and also the clean energy generation as much as possible stays at home right here in Rhode Island. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Beecher. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Beecher. You have a great night. Next witness will be, it looks like Michelle Carpenter. Michelle, you there?
Yes.
Hi, this is Rep Bennett. Go right ahead.
Great. Thank you, Chair Bennett, members of the committee. My name is Michelle Carpenter, and I represent Turning Point Energy. We're a community solar developer that's active in Rhode Island since 2016. I know you have a number of folks testifying, so I'll be brief. I simply wanted to express my appreciation for Chairwoman Ruggiero on her ongoing leadership in clean energy, and in particular for House Bill 5762, and echo the sentiments of the Nature Conservancy, Green Energy Consumers Alliance, and others about how critical this legislation is in combating climate change. And finally, this bill, in partnership with other programs, really demonstrates to companies like mine that Rhode Island is serious about supporting clean energy and demonstrating such. I'm available for any questions should this board committee have any.
And thank you very much. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you, Michelle, and you have a great night.
Thank you. You too.
That concludes the verbal testimony on 5762. Green Development is for the bill. Northeast Energy Council is for the bill. New England Power Generators Association is opposed to the bill. Jordan Guyette is for the bill. Laura Westberg is for the bill. Handy Law is for the bill. PUC no position. DPUZ no position. Paul Klinkman is for the bill. Green Energy Consumers Alliance is for the bill. NRG is against the bill, and CLF is for the bill. That concludes the hearing for 5762. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee. Appreciate it.
Okay, moving right along, our next bill is 5627 by Representative Tabone. It's an acrylate in the motor vehicles. Representative Tabone, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman and members. HB 5627, it says this act would create a low-emissions diesel standard used to power a diesel fuel compression ignition internal combustion engine. And basically, the purpose of this bill is to put us in a position to, one, have the cleanest air in the world, equal to CARB, which is California's air in diesel. Wait, let me. One sec. I was doing so well. I have my little notes here. It's California Air, the Air Board. Okay, so 2, it would be eligible for UN, United Nations carbon tax credits. And 3rd, we'd become the first state to do this voluntarily versus being cited or fined by the EPA like Texas was in the 90s and California in the 80s. So there are about 7 or 8 products that have been vetted by the Texas process. So this was inspired by the Texas lead law, Texas low emissions diesel law. And basically, back in the 90s, they had one of the worst air, had some of the worst air in the country. And they were cited by the EPA and fined and forced to find a way to take care of this. And their Texas lead law addressed this, and they came up with a way to do it through additives. These additives lessen nitrogen oxide, or NOx, aka the toxic smog that we see, as well as the aromatics in the fuel. The law requires currently a 28%. This law would require less than 10%. The additives have a rough cost of approximately 1 cent versus California's roughly 50 cents per, again, the carb diesel fuel. Currently, there are 3 to 5 additives regularly found in fuel, such as detergents, and as it sounds, it helps clean the engine. Conductivity helps control the spark or the fire. And lubricity, which when the removal of sulfur, it needs lube, and therefore it enhances the process. Some products improve mileage, enhance lubricity to break fuel, increase the cetane, which creates a better burn, and cleans fuel injectors and engines. It also lessens the polycycles, which is a carcinogen. It calls for a reduction to 3% versus a 6% where it currently is. A polycycle is a sequence of aromatics that are harder to break, therefore harder to burn, and make its way to the atmosphere. So if we are heading in that direction anyway, if as a state and as a society we are looking to have better air quality, we are looking to, we have bills introduced right now to have carbon tax credits from the UN, and we're looking to make sure that we leave a better world for future generations. This is a great start at a very low cost. It would increase our fuel cost by ½ cent to 1 cent total. It would enhance the quality, well, vehicles that are still running on fossil fuels. It would clean their engines, their injectors, and possibly get them better mileage. And this has all been proven in the tax-led vetting process. And again, it would put Rhode Island on the map, regionally, nationally, and internationally, because we would be doing something that would be competing with the air quality of California, which is very stringent, as we know, and it's been very costly. What California does is does further refueling, refining, and then they add a few other additives that is pretty costly, and we've seen that. So with that said, this is one of the bills where I'm going to put a lot of emphasis this year because I believe that, again, it would give Rhode Island something to really hang our hat on and be proud of, and it wouldn't be costly. With that, thank you so much for your time, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Representative Tabone. It's interesting stuff. Any questions for Representative Tabone? Representative Corcoran.
Thank you, Representative Tabone. Could you explain why it would be less costly here? What's the difference between what they're doing in California that is costly and what you're proposing that we do here? And did you say none of our neighboring states have adopted this?
Yeah, so my understanding, I've done some research on this, but I'm not a scientist and I'm not going to claim to be an expert. What I do know is that California was fined in the either late 70s or 80s, and they've continued to use a similar process from what they came up with to lessen their fumes or enhance their quality of their air. And Texas opted for a different way through additives, and basically California has a separate process of continued refining and enhancing the cetane. The Tex Lead, what they did is created I don't want to say a competition, but put it out there for companies to come up with different ways to get there, to help them get to what the EPA was asking for. And they came up with additives that are mixed into the fuel, and therefore creating enhancing the fuel and therefore the other things that I mentioned.
Okay, I'm sorry, I thought you were comparing, so this would be more like what Texas has done. And do those additives, have you seen any research on what those additives do to the engines that the fuel goes into?
Yeah, some of these additives actually clean the engine because by lessening the aromatics, wait 1 second, I want to make sure I'm not... By lessening the nitrogen oxide, then, the aromatics, that, which is the carbon, then it cleans the fuel, and therefore you have a cleaner burn inside your engines, and it's cleaning the fuel injectors and your engine inside, and that's what, because you have a cleaner burn, what's left is what's going into the atmosphere, which is cleaner than what we currently have and what the law requires. So, yes, not all of them do that. Some focus on other areas, but for the most part, they do. This is one of the areas that it does enhance, which is the burning and therefore cleaning of the engines and the fuel injectors.
Thank you.
Great. Any more questions? Yes.
I do, Mr.
Representative
Chairman.
Speakman.
Thank you. Representative Tabone, where would this cleaner fuel come from? How would it get to the gas stations in Rhode Island?
So
Who does the refining or the adding of the additives?
Yeah, so there are companies around the country that they have different places where they do their process, and then they would bring it to Providence, per se, where the distributors are. They do their mixing there, and then it would go to point of retail sales.
Okay, so who would be responsible then for producing the cleaner fuel?
There are companies that specialize in creating additives that are put into the fuel. So the fuel comes in, let's say, through the Port of Providence. It's in the tanks, and then these companies have, they come in, whoever the fuel companies contract with, or whichever one they decide to go with, they bring it in, they mix it, let's say in Providence, and then they fill up the trucks that then go to distribute to the point of sale.
Okay, so gas stations would not be permitted to sell diesel fuel that wasn't treated in this way?
No.
Right? That's the idea?
Yeah, exactly. They would get it prepared. It would be prepared by the time it gets to them.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. We have no verbal testimony, but we do have DEM has concerns and Rhode Island Business Coalition is opposed. That concludes the hearing on 5627.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Tabone. Our next bill will be 5761 by Representative Potter. It's an act relating to agriculture and forestry, Family Farm Protection Act. Representative Potter, you there?
I am here, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Appreciate your time tonight. So this bill is pretty straightforward. It's modeled after federal legislation that Senator Cory Booker had introduced back in 2019. And the substance of it really is just that it would define what an animal feeding operation is and a concentrated animal feeding operation. And it would limit farm size by just a simple metric animal count, really to ensure that any existing farm is only growing at a manageable scale. So they're not negatively impacting the local environment, and it would prevent any industrial-sized, would-be industrial-sized operation from ever coming into the state. So important to note that factory farming is a major contributor to climate change, and the local environment and mental impact they have is absolutely devastating. I won't go into the detail. The committee's been provided a lot of written testimony from a number of organizations that expand on the research and the data. But in short, 70% of all of our total ammonia emissions are due to factory farming, and 37% of all of our emissions of methane, which has a global warming potential that's 20 times that of carbon dioxide, is from factory farming. All said and done, factory farming contributes 90 million metric tons of carbon dioxide into our atmosphere, and it makes up 14% of our total greenhouse gas emissions. So thankfully, we don't currently have any operations here in the state that would compare to the really large industrial operations around the country. So it's really an opportunity for our state to acknowledge and recognize the role of factory farming in climate change, but it's also important legislation that would keep control of the direct and immediate local environmental impact that these operations have and the effects that they have on nearby residents with air pollution and water runoff specifically related to the waste from manure. The EPA has identified what they call, quote, significant measurable drinking water impairment in 29 states attributed to large animal farming. So we want to encourage people to buy local. We want to promote local farms. We want to support local farms that have an environmentally friendly and sustainable process. And we want to make sure that our farms grow at a measurable and sustainable pace so we're not dealing with these well-documented, really harmful environmental consequences that livestock farms can have when they get really sizable. So it's something that should be regulated within all of that context. And lastly, I'll just say the figures and the limitations in the legislation were determined based on information that I got from the DEM, and they were all done to establish what current operating capacities are for the largest farms and allow some reasonable measure of their growth. To the best of my knowledge right now, this would only impact one current operation, which is one of the largest cattle farms in the state, where they had around 90 beef cattle pre-COVID and are now up to 280. From talking to them, it was really based on some COVID-specific dynamics with how the supply chain has developed in that time. But as far as I know, every other local operation would not be impacted by this. and it gives them a reasonable amount of growing potential, and there is an effective date in the legislation of 2040. So really thinking about the long-term aspects of it all. And Mr. Chairman, I'd also like to note too, some of the written testimony came in. This bill number is 5761. Some of it was incorrectly posted as 5761. I'm sorry, 5671.
Thank you. Any questions for Representative Potter? Seeing none. Thank you, Representative Potter. We're going to go to our verbal testimony now. Our first witness is... You're welcome. Our first witness is David Datakian from Eat, Drink, Rhode Island. David, you're there?
Yes.
I hope I
Yes,
didn't
I am. Thank
destroy
you, Mr.
your
Chairman.
last name.
It's okay. Everyone does. Dadakian.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the committee for having me. As you mentioned, I run a business called Eat, Drink, Rhode Island. I am also a part of Blackbird Farm in Smithfield. I've been with the farm for 13 years now, and I strongly oppose this bill. And I have to be honest, it pains me to strongly oppose this bill. I've worked in sustainable food and specifically to meat for 20 years. I haven't eaten from a factory farm in 20 years. I have made it a priority for myself, my family, and for everyone in the state of Rhode Island. I run Good Meat Matters sessions out of Blackbird Farm. I've worked with pioneers in the animal husbandry industries, Temple Grandin, who oversees slaughterhouses, and Joel Salatin, who's pioneered the type of farming that we do at Blackbird on pasture and in rotation. And like I said, so it pains me to oppose this bill, but it is a potentially harmful bill for meat farming in Rhode Island. We don't have a single farm, and I believe Representative Potter said this, we don't have a single farm in the state that could even attempt to become a so-called factory farm. We don't have the ability, the infrastructure, the farmland, or labor to create anything like an animal feeding operation in our state as defined by this bill, and really not in most of New England, to be honest with you. I have been in my travels and my work in this field for the last 20 years. I've been to Texas. I've had that experience of driving down the highway alongside a CAFO where the animals are just in pens for literally, it feels like hours, but for a couple good miles. And we don't have anything even approaching that, and could never have anything approaching that here in Rhode Island. I mean, these are the types of things when people talk about these types of operations around the country, they use Rhode Island as one of those measuring sticks. I mean, we'd have to, take a quarter of the state to farmland for beef to have the type of facility that is described in this bill. Representative Potter did mention Blackbird Farm, the 280 cattle. We're at that at the moment only because buying has been so down for the last year. But generally, we have around 100, 150 head of cattle, and about double that in pigs. And we've never had anywhere near the numbers that could consider the operation being called a factory farm. And certainly, it's completely humane. I mean, I have had the opportunity to either meet, speak with, or visit every other meat farm in the state, and I can say unequivocally that some of these animals may be cared for better than a lot of people in our state. I've been to the slaughter facilities in our state and in adjoining Massachusetts. None are approaching the level of a factory. I've worked with DEM and Ken Ayers and the state veterinarian Scott Marshall for many years, and their standards for animal husbandry are some of the highest in the entire country. While there are certainly things our legislature could pass to ensure the health and prosperity of meat in our local food system, passing a bill to prohibit something that couldn't exist here is difficult to understand. I know Representative Potter spoke with Blackbird Farms manager Brandon Bouthillette, the son of the owners, Anne Marie and Kevin. Brandon told me about the conversation, and he extended an invitation to Representative Potter to see the farm for himself. But I know, understandably, the representative declined due to the pandemic. But I hope in the future he can make the visit. And I extend the same invitation to all the members of the committee and any of the members of the General Assembly who'd like to come see the farm. Respectfully, I urge you to not pass this bill, and I would be happy to take any questions if anyone has any. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you very much. You have a good night.
Thank you.
That concludes the verbal witness, testimony on this bill, the written testimony, Mighty Earth, it looks like Mighty Earth is for the bill. Food and Water Watch is for the bill. Jesse Kingston's for the bill. Linda Stevens and Laura Westberger for the bill. John Hopkins Center is for the bill. Rhode Island Farm Bureau is against the bill, and Animal League Defense Fund is for the bill. That concludes the hearing on 5761. And our next bill is 5920 by Representative Cortven. It's an act relating to towns and cities, coastal hazards. Go ahead, Representative Cortven.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, committee members, for all hanging in there this evening. 5920 came to me from Coastal Resource Management, and this is enabling legislation, so there's no requirement of any town, but it's more of an educational effort, and they would like to encourage the 21 coastal communities to adopt their coastal hazard application worksheet and process when they're permitting homes that are in the flood zone. And if you go and look at the storm tools at some time, I advise all of you to do that at some point, you will see that there's, in a 100-year flood, there is potential way beyond CRMC's 200-foot jurisdiction for homes and buildings to really be impacted by storm waters and flood waters. So this is, CRMC has developed a hazard application worksheet for builders, property owners to work through. They don't require the developer, homeowner to adopt any of the suggestions that might result from them going through the application process, but they do, in the CRMC zone, they do require them to work through the application so that they can be more aware of what the potential hazards that they might face, in the future. So this would allow cities and towns and the coastal communities to use that same process. And I think it's in CRMC's 5-year strategic plan to do an educational tour amongst those communities to teach them about this and to encourage them to adopt this so that property developers just can be more aware. So there's no, but it doesn't put any requirements on anybody. It's simply enabling legislation.
Very good. Any questions? Yes, Representative Fenton Fung.
Hi, thank you, Rep. Cortven. I thank you for getting this going on the coastal communities. I have a question because while we were going on tonight, I was looking at this actual work product here that they want all the residents to go through. I have a question. Do these forms ever get submitted or are they ever required by insurance companies when we're talking about trying to get flood insurance?
That's a good question. And right now, I don't know the answer to that.
Okay,
But I'll find out for you.
I appreciate it. Yeah,
we have Jeff Willis on. He's just standing by if you have any questions.
Oh, good. I'm glad he called in. That's great.
Okay.
Jeff,
All right,
are you
thank
there?
you. We'll listen to him. Yep.
Jeff? Oh, wait a minute. Hi, Jeff.
Hi, yes.
You've been listening to the conversation?
I am.
Great. Okay, go ahead, Representative Fung. Representative Fenton Fung, you can re-ask your question?
Sure, I apologize. So my question is really these forms that we're having the
Yes, I am.
work through, are they going to be required by insurance companies or are they
Hi,
currently?
hello.
Yep.
I am. Yes, I am.
Can you hear me?
Mr. Willis, you there?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
Can you hear the question?
Yes, I can.
You got to lower the volume on your device. On your computer. On your computer.
There you
Do you
go.
want me to? Okay.
Go ahead. Representative Fenton Fong's got a question for you.
All right. So I'm just asking, I'll ask it again. Are these forms that we're asking the applicants to work through, are they going to be required by insurance companies or are they currently, either now or in the future? And how would that affect different types of insurance rates in flood zones?
Sure. No, they are not required by insurance companies right now. They are only required by the CRMC for certain types of development activities. And it's like Rep. Korchevine had mentioned, it is for an awareness to let people know that the project that they are proposing, what it may have for impacts at the end of its design life. But no, there is no insurance requirements for it.
Okay. And are they held in any kind of public forum where insurance companies could request them?
Well, they are part of our public process for applicants when they are seeking a permit from the agency. So I suppose the insurance companies could also request a copy of that exercise, but there's no requirement to do so.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, that would be one of my concerns too, is perhaps with these forms, if there was flagging and, if that would cause any change in insurance rates, but it's something we'll just have to work through. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none, that concludes the hearing on 5920. Next, no written testimony, the only one was Mr. Willis. Thank you, Mr. Willis.
Thank you, Chairman.
Our next bill is 5524 by Representative Carson. It's a House resolution requesting the Rhode Island Division of Statewide Planning to provide an Excel spreadsheet or equivalent and GIS map layer showing commercial scale solar development in Rhode Island cities and towns and the sites identified in the August 2020 Office of Energy Resource Report. The floor is yours, Representative Carson.
Thank you, Chairman. Actually, it's a resolution. It's not a bill, so it's actually a pretty easy thing that I think we should be able to get passed. There's a lot of discussion around a lot of bills that we hear about solar siting. Now, we hear a lot of discussion around, we heard bills earlier this month or last month about concern about the loss of forests, loss of farmlands, a debate as to whether we should be putting these commercial solar sites in the brownfields, how many brownfields are left, should we use parking lots? There's a lot of discussion about that. And so I put this resolution in because I thought that in order for us to make informed decisions about where to put commercial sites, we need to know where they already are, and we don't really know that. Like, how many are actually in western Rhode Island? How many are in southern Rhode Island? And it's really a simple request that we can use on a map of some kind to see where they are. That way we can determine what kind of spaces are left when we create the policy for future siting of commercial sites. I have spoken with DOA, and I requested that we get this information, I think, by the end of April. They're unable to give us that on the end of April. They need until January. They need until January because the data that's coming from the data's feeding in from the municipalities, and they have to adjust all the municipal data in order to get it into one spreadsheet and therefore onto one GIS map. So, but other than that, they didn't have a problem doing it. They were, actually think they were doing it anyway. So I'm prepared to amend this resolution and give them until January, and then they can give us that, and we can use that in the future to make some more informed decisions about where we want to target the placement of commercial solar, where we want to, spaces that are still open, and then areas that we don't want to use anymore in the future. So it's simple. It's just a resolution looking for information.
Okay, we have no opposition to this. Any questions for Representative Carson? Seeing none?
No, I was
we
just going to
have-
say, Chairman, that I think that this is a very good bill. It's hard to get a resolution, I should say, because it is hard to get a perspective on what exactly is going on in all the different communities. And I mean, it's a small state, and I drive and I see, farms here and farms there. It would be nice to have a, GIS overview to see where they are. And again, since siting is a big issue, I think it's a very smart move, and it's just a piece of education for us all to get a better view on where we can site some more of these. I think that, my contention when they were cutting down the forest is that they were picking like the low-hanging fruit. It was easy to, grab some of the ground from some of these farmers, where I think we could probably do more on some of the commercial buildings. I see it a lot more in Massachusetts than I do here in Rhode Island. And again, it'd just be good to get that perspective. So thank you, Rep. Carson, for putting this resolution in. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Representative Corcoran.
I'll just follow up on Chairman Fogarty's comments. I think if we can wrap our heads around what's out there, then we could strategize the next thing about how to incentivize people interested in doing solar development to use a more favorable site instead of, like we heard earlier tonight, where they're cutting 100 acres down of trees to put a solar farm in. Maybe those developers with that in mind would go look, we could kind of point them in the direction of a more favorable site. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, we're going to go to our first. There's nobody on opposition to this. We have two witnesses, and we have written testimony from both these witnesses. Mrs. Anderbois. Oh, I guess I'll wait for you. Hi, Mrs. Anderbois, are you there?
I am here.
Go right ahead.
Great. Thank you so much, Chairman, and thank you to the committee. I know this has been a long evening for you, and thank you to Representative Carson for sponsoring this resolution. I'm Sue Anderbois. I am with the Nature Conservancy, and the Nature Conservancy strongly supports this resolution. And I'll just be really quick. I think you all know that we need to rapidly expand our renewable energy to meet our climate crisis, while at the same time we also need to direct that development to preferred areas and away from our unfragmented forests. So the Nature Conservancy wants to be a partner in identifying and implementing solutions that help us get there, meet our climate goals without losing our important unfragmented forests. But to do that, we really need this data, and really see this resolution as a necessary step for getting this data from the Division of Planning and the Department of Administration. So we're grateful to Representative Carson for introducing it, and thank you so much for your support.
Thank you. Any questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you very much, Mrs. Anderbaugh.
Thank you.
Our next witness is Meg Kerr from the Audubon Society. Hi, Meg, you there?
Yes, I am.
Go ahead, the
Chairman.
floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair, members of the committee. I'm Meg Kerr with the Audubon Society, and I want to thank Representative Carson for putting in this resolution. I want to point out that the resolution both asks for a map of the built large commercial scale solar. It also asks for mapping of the Office of Energy Resources data for the analysis that they did on how much energy we could produce in preferred locations. So it would both give us an idea of where the built solar is and where we could site it. We're very excited to get this information. I think it will help make informed decisions moving forward. And I just wanted to point out that in my written testimony, I included the principles that the Solar Siting Stakeholder Group developed way back in 2018. It was a while ago. And that group agreed that we want to direct solar to these already built areas. But here we are in 2021, and we really have not done anything to change our state policies to direct the solar in that way. So I think this data will give community members, solar developers, decision makers like yourselves, the information that we need to really drive this conversation forward. So thank you very much for putting this forward. We hope that this will pass and we'll get this information.
Thank you.
Happy to take questions. Yep.
Any questions? Seeing none, thank you, Meg. You have a good night.
Thank you.
That concludes the hearing on 5524. Our next bill and last bill is 5921 by Representative Price. It's an act relating to fish and wildlife, commercial fisheries. It permits the dockside sale of allowable finfish, live lobsters, crabs, live whelk upon the issuance of a temporary direct sale dealer license by the Department of Environmental Management to a commercial fishing license holder. Do we have Representative Price?
He was on earlier, but he's gone.
He's gone? Okay, there's no verbal. We have, the Rhode Island Farm Bureau is for the bill. The Rhode Island DOH and DEM are against the bill. Eat Drink Rhode Island is for the bill. Any questions about the bill? Seeing none, that concludes the hearing for 5921. Do I hear a motion to adjourn? Second? We are adjourned. Thank you very much
Second.
for everybody
Thank you.
hanging in.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Do I have anything I got to sign?